Hogwarts. Big Boss in the Harry Potter world. Chapter 61. What? Hermione was shocked. She was not a little wizard with dyslexia. She had read too many books, so she naturally knew what an animagus was. Hush your voice. Are you sure? Hermione asked nervously. Nonsense, if I could be sure, I would have taken the professor to catch him. Solemn said that he is not yet sure, and he can only act when he is sure. But Neville just told me that he hasn't fed that toad much. What did that toad eat in such a long time? The school is no better than the wild, there are no bugs for it to eat. So there is something wrong with that toad, maybe it's still very big. Solemn then took out another coin and said, be careful, don't be too nervous when you see that toad. I cast a transformation spell on this coin, but it's only valid for about 10 hours. You come to me once a day, I will continue to cast a spell on it. As soon as you see that toad, throw the coin in the fireplace, I will feel it hot, and I will bring the professor to you. The reason why Solemn went to Hermione to do this was not because Neville was really. If Neville could be trusted, Solemn wouldn't go to Hermione either. It's best to catch it, but don't be too deliberate. If you catch it, go to the small classroom. Don't forget to throw the coin into the fireplace before you go, otherwise I won't know. Solemn added. Hermione didn't speak, she was digesting what Solemn had just said. Wait, you said you could cast a transformation spell. That's. Okay, I know what you want to say, but it can't be regarded as a complete transformation spell, because the duration is only a short 10 hours. Solemn leaned back tactically and leaned back in his chair. Okay, now tell me, what did Weasley do to you? Hermione gritted her teeth and said the matter again. Solemn smacked his lips after hearing this silly girl, she was so angry that she cried. Hermione, on Halloween, he said you had no friends. With a sneer, Solemn then asked Hermione, have you thought about it, he already has friends with Weasley. Besides being with Potter, does he have any other friends? Quote. And now, he says you're going to tell me. Tell what? Professor Snape is going to steal the Sorcerer's Stone. Even trolls don't think so, unless they're out of their minds, or have absolute confidence in their own strength. Be confident, otherwise no one would have stolen the Philosopher's Stone at Hogwarts, right under Dumbledore's nose. It's not that I look down on them. What ideas can they come up with? It's nothing more than a small report to Professor McGonagall about Snape. After getting stuck with Professor McGonagall, go to Hagrid's routine and ask how the three-headed dogs weigh. At some point, Draco and Neville stuck their heads out by the door frame and looked this way. See whatever you want, come here if you want to hear it. Solemn waved. Draco smiled, and sat down with Neville honestly. In the past 2 days, Solemn had drilled the two of them harder, and Draco was a little afraid of Solemn now. By the way, let me tell you something. Solemn said with a smile, at the end of this year's term, there is a good show in school. If you want to watch it, you can sign up here, tickets are 5 galleons, popcorn is 5 sickles a bucket. Quote. Over the next few days, Hermione's presence in the Gryffindor common room increased. She cared about what Solemn said about Neville's toad possibly being an animagus. In the evening Hermione sat in a corner of the lounge, writing Professor McGonagall's thesis, while paying attention to every move in the lounge. It was a bit difficult because Hermione couldn't stare at the parchment and at the same time stare at the lounge, but luckily Hermione wasn't alone, and Neville, at Solemn's behest, helped Hermione stare at her toad. While paying attention to the toad, Hermione also noticed Harry and Ronald's small movements. These two were always running to Hagrid's hut these days, and Hermione knew Solemn was right. After the two men hit a wall with Professor McGonagall, they turned their ideas on Hagrid. According to what Hermione knew about Hagrid, Hagrid said that the possibility of slipping was 100%. The last time they asked Hagrid about the three-headed dog, he slipped it up and gave Nicholas May a chance. Presumably this time I will also tell how to pass the three-headed dog. But this has nothing to do with Hermione. Solemn is right, since people don't welcome him, there is no need for him to join in, and people don't appreciate it. Hermione was thinking about something while she was writing her thesis. Until Neville on the side touched her. Hermione, look, Lef is there. Neville said as he pointed the direction to Hermione. Hermione looked in the direction Neville pointed, and near the Gryffindor doorway, a toad, not round at all, was crawling from the shadows to the crowded place, It didn't look like any other toad uses, bounce, like that. You go and grab it. After saying that, Hermione took out the coin Solemn gave her and stood up and walked towards the fireplace. Unexpectedly, Hermione and Neville, who was holding a toad, were walking towards the small classroom. And Hermione was discussing Professor McGonagall's thesis with Neville pretending nothing happened. As soon as they stepped into the door of the small classroom, they were separated by two people on the left and the right, and the toad in Neville's hand was even blown away. Professor. Solemn motioned for his hand. Snape quickly drew out his wand and pointed at the toad on the ground. It's true. Even though Snape was going very fast, he still missed the target. The toad hopped aside to avoid Snape's spell. At this time, even Neville, who was still sitting on the ground, could understand, how could an ordinary toad avoid a professor's spell, and Neville had learned a lot from Solemn, who knew what Snape just shot. The speed was already very fast, but even so, it still failed to hit the target. While jumping up to avoid Snape's spell, the toad was transforming rapidly, becoming a chubby male wizard by the time he landed. Seeing this scene, Solemn cast a petrification curse without saying a word. Snape on one side was more ruthless, he swung his wand quickly, and the chandelier on the ceiling was transformed into a giant python and bit the wizard below. But all this was in vain. Snape's magic was broken first, the wizard just pointed with his wand, and the transfiguration on the chandelier was broken, and it was also used to resist Solemn's petrification spell. Crack! The petrified chandelier fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. Solemn and Snape pointed their wands at the wizard in front of them solemnly. They didn't make any more moves. Because they found that the wizard in front of them was not easy to deal with. And the wizard saw that Solemn and Snape didn't make another move, and didn't attack either. Hermione and Neville on the side only reacted at this time, hurriedly took out their wands and pointed at the wizard in front of them. But no one even looked at them. Really, I managed to find a good job through my relationship, but I was discovered. The chubby wizard complained. Who are you? What is the purpose of infiltrating Hogwarts? Solemn asked. Granger, go get the headmaster. It was Snape. Snape's wand was pointed at the wizard in front of him, which prevented him from summoning his Patronus to inform Dumbledore. If the wizard in front of him made a move when he summoned the patron saint, then he would not be sure to protect these students. It's not necessary, I have no malice. The wizard spread his hands, and Dumbledore knows of my existence, after all, this is also the custom. Solemn and Snape exchanged a quick glance. Come on, shall we put away the wand first? After finishing speaking, the wizard put away his wand first. But Solemn and Snape remained unmoved. They are not that stupid. What if the opponent suddenly attacked while collecting the wand? What's your purpose in infiltrating Hogwarts? For the Philosopher's Stone. Snape was looking into the other's eyes. Hey, you're boring. It's better not to use legilimency on people casually, it's too rude. The other party obviously discovered Snape's intentions. With Evan's unremitting efforts, the two sides had a cordial and friendly conversation. The two parties at the meeting fully exchanged views and reached an understanding. By the way, Evans is the wizard who turned from a toad. After a confrontation for a while, the two sides finally decided to sit down and have a good talk. According to Evans, he found this good job with great difficulty in the end after various contacts. Indeed, as Solemn initially thought, Evans worked for the Presbyterian Church. He infiltrated Hogwarts for several purposes. The first one is the main task of this year. It is to protect the Philosopher's Stone and not leave Hogwarts. This task is a task assigned by the executive committee under the Presbyterian Church. As long as the Philosopher's Stone didn't leave Hogwarts, Evans didn't have to worry about it. The second is also a must-do job for those lurking in Hogwarts. That is to collect information about all the little wizards, talents, personalities, relationships, academic performance, what they did during school, etc. In short, all the personal information of the little wizards. After the information is collected, there will be special people to judge which young wizards are threatening and which young wizards can be cultivated. After all, there are not many families like Selwyn and Orvis in the wizarding world, and no matter how good Schuler's teaching is, he can't conquer the world. Third, spy on Dumbledore. Yes, spy on Dumbledore. You don't need to do anything, just monitor it. Dumbledore had never been a Presbyterian, never had been. For a great wizard who does not belong to the Council of Elders, it is quite normal to take surveillance. Just because the Council of Elders left Voldemort alone doesn't mean they despised him, he was a great wizard after all. The Presbyterian Church controls the whole of Europe, and the Kingdom of Ying is a piece of land the size of a palm in Europe. If the whole of Europe is regarded as a country, then the country of Ying is a province, and it is also a remote province. There is a crazy murderer in this province, doing things crazily in this province. But this lunatic only does things in this province, he doesn't move around the country to commit crimes, so the impact is very small. Therefore, the importance of the Presbyterian Church is limited. After all, Grindelwald did such a big thing back then, and the Presbyterian Council didn't care about it, let alone you, a bandit leader who can only run around in the countryside and commit crimes, and you are still half dead. However, what Grindelwald did back then was whether the Presbyterian Church really didn't care about it, or it was intentional indulgence. It's hard to say, after all, so many people died, the material of this philosopher's stone, right, some things can't be thought deeply, otherwise it will scare people to death. For Dumbledore and Voldemort, the two great wizards who are not under the management of the Council of Elders, the attitude adopted by the Council of Elders is surveillance. In more official terms, we will pay close attention to the follow-up development of the incident and take measures when necessary. In layman's terms, we don't care about the matter between you Dumbledore and Voldemort. If you kill Voldemort, then everyone will be happy. You have made an important contribution to the stability of the Wizarding Society, and maybe you will be given a little red flower. But if you are killed by Voldemort, I'm sorry, then we won't wipe your asterisk for you. Unless Voldemort goes too far and things get serious, we'll deal with him. Evans was the one the Presbyterians planted at Hogwarts, at Dumbledore's side. He didn't need to take the initiative to do anything, as long as he reported what he saw to the elders. At Hogwarts, this is a good job. You don't have to risk your life to work hard, you can stay comfortably in Hogwarts, and you can go to Hogsmeade for a drink if you're fine, and you can sleep until you wake up naturally every day. What's the difference between such a task and a vacation? It is nothing more than a little hard work to maintain the animagus. But that's nothing compared to those really dangerous missions. Such a beautiful task naturally attracted the attention of many wizards, but in the end it was obvious that Evans had a more reliable connection, suppressed other competitors, and arranged him to come to Hogwarts. And indeed, as Solemn analyzed, Neville's uncle was the person in charge of this matter. Otherwise, how could an elder give a toad to a younger generation as a pet? However, Evans is also complaining. Originally, he thought that he could enjoy Hogwarts comfortably, but unexpectedly, these brats are too troublesome, especially Gryffindor. According to Evans, Gryffindor student files are the thickest. After all, he still has a task to collect the behavior of the students in the school. Solemn knows how capable the Gryffindor gang is. Especially the twins of Harry Potter and the Weasley family. Evans said that these people have the most records, they are doing things everywhere, and just now he followed Potter and Weasley to Hagrid's hut, he just returned to the Gryffindor lounge, reported before I had time to write, I was caught here. When I was on the road, I felt something was wrong. I felt like I was exposed. Evans said this, and glanced at his master, little fat man, you were too strong at that time. You have never used such a strong force when holding me, and you almost squeezed my shit out. Quote. This sentence is level, and the few people involved couldn't answer it. So, according to you, Headmaster Dumbledore knows about you? Solemn asked. That's right, although he hasn't met me, but there are Presbyterians in the school, every headmaster knows this. Evans nodded in agreement. Boy of the Selwyn family. Evans said here with a smile, I know what you are worried about. After all, your great achievements have already been spread all over the world. You killed the heir of the rich family. It is said to be the hottest news in Ying Kingdom in recent years. But you don't have to worry, my surname is not Rich, and I am not one of those wizards who eat by watching their faces. After finishing speaking, he gave a thumbs up, not knowing that he really appreciated it, still joking. Snape watched Solemn from the sidelines. What his student had done in the past, Snape had no idea at all, but from Evans' words just now, he knew that his student seemed to have done something extraordinary. Solemn didn't think Evans was lying because it was completely unnecessary. And if it was a lie, it would be too easy to expose the lie, because Snape would definitely report it to Dumbledore. With Dumbledore's means, Evans probably won't be able to get out of Hogwarts. This conversation seems to be over, Evans said. There is nothing left to say. I don't think so, Snape said deadpan. Glancing at Snape, Evans said in admiration, it's amazing, with your level of occlumency practiced, I don't think it's easy for great wizards to peek into your thoughts. It has to be said that Evans still has something to be sent to Hogwarts as an errand. At least his eyesight was there. Snape's occlumency was of a super high level to be able to lie in front of Voldemort without revealing himself. For a wizard like Voldemort, the use of legilimency is like breathing, and it has become instinctive. Because he doesn't believe anyone, he will naturally use legilimency to confirm whether the other party is lying. So, Evans, you've been exposed, so what are you going to do from now on? Solemn asked a question. What else can I do? I can do whatever I want. Evans said what I should do or what I should do. The previous headmasters of Hogwarts knew that there were Presbyterians in Hogwarts, so they didn't say anything, everyone it's all tacit. Now it's just that this layer of paper windows has been pierced, so what's the big deal? By the way, let me tell you, I have my job at Hogwarts, and my position is only bystander and recorder. Do you understand what I mean? Evans said the information revealed here is subtle. His subtext is that I am just a spectator, and I have nothing to do with Hogwarts. Oh, then in the next few years, I estimate that your workload will increase greatly. Solemn also said a very interesting sentence. What will happen at Hogwarts in the next few years, Solemn will know better than anyone else. Clear. The Toad matter came to an end, and Solemn was in a good mood. At least he doesn't have to worry about Evans having bad intentions and causing trouble for himself. But the settlement of Evans' matter does not mean that Solemn will be all right. He has not forgotten the strange appearance of his name on the Marauder's map. He's been trying to figure it out all this time. Why can't my name be displayed on the Marauder's map? Solemn had confirmed with Elrond during the last Christmas vacation that his name had not been cursed, nor had he received any strange curses. But there must be a reason why his name can't be displayed. If a concealment spell is cast on the name, then his name will not appear on the map. But his own name on the map was represented as a blob of ink, which puzzled Solemn. Everything happens for a reason, and Solemn now has to figure out why his name isn't showing up on the map. But this is obviously not an easy task. If you want to know the secret of the name, you can't understand it just by flipping through a book. But Solemn wasn't too anxious, it's just that his name couldn't be displayed on the map, so it didn't seem to affect him too much. The final exams are approaching, and the first-year students are starting to get nervous. Hermione also made a review timetable for herself and Neville, who didn't practice spells in the small classroom much now except for their homework. Hermione attaches great importance to exams, and in her opinion, it would be unforgivable if she failed the exam because of practicing spells and delaying her review time. But today Hermione came to the small classroom alone. She knew that Solemn would usually come here when the Slytherins were not in class. Hermione, why are you free to come here today? Hermione usually spends this time in the library reviewing. I've discovered something. Hermione walked over to Solemn and sat down. Solemn looked at Hermione, waiting for her to speak. Today I saw Ronald's hand hurt and it was swollen badly. They've been running to Hagrid a lot lately, Hermione said. What do you care about them? Since they like to make trouble for themselves, they have to bear the consequences themselves. Solemn looked up at Hermione. Of course Solemn knew what was going on with Ronald's hands, but he was lazy. If you really want to help them, then you can't take the initiative to do so. You have to let them beg you to think about what happened to you before. Hurrying up is not business. Hermione offered to help several times, but what did she get in return? People are not ungrateful. Solemn was talking to Hermione when Draco hurried through the door and barged in. Solemn. Guess what I found? Draco yelled as soon as he entered the door. They're raising dragons. I'm going to report them, and Scar and Weasley will be fired. And of course, that big fool. Solemn cast a glance at the panting Draco. Speak up, what's going on? Once Draco had caught his breath, he began to tell Solemn about his discovery of the day. Like Hermione, he had noticed something was wrong with Potter and Weasley lately. After observing a few times, Draco found that these two people were always running towards Hagrid's hut during this time. If it were someone else, Draco wouldn't be so concerned, but one of these two people is Scarhead, and the other is the scum of the Weasley family, both of whom Draco hates, so Draco secretly followed him today. Up. Turns out that big stupid Hagrid was raising dragons, which is pretty awesome. In the 17th century, the wizarding community had banned private dragon breeding. Selling, breeding, and hatching dragons without permission are extremely serious crimes. Because dragons are uncontrolled, they can easily expose the wizarding world. Once a dragon flies into a Muggle city, you can imagine what kind of disaster it will be. Let alone what kind of personnel and property losses will be caused. Once such a catastrophic event occurs, all relevant personnel of the Ministry of Magic will be in big trouble. The Department of Magical Accidents and Disasters is the first to bear the brunt. Once such a catastrophic event occurs, all departments under the Department of Disasters will have to work overtime to death, especially the accident reversal team. How many people will see you in the city? You can imagine how these poor amnestics are working tirelessly to erase the memories of Muggles. Then there is the Misinformation Office under the Disaster Department. They are responsible for communicating with the Muggle Prime Minister to discuss how to give some superficially plausible non-magical explanations for this matter. Secondly, there is the Department of Management and Control of Fantastic Beasts. They want to subdue the fire dragon immediately, and even join forces with the strikers from the Department of Magical Law Enforcement to solve it as soon as possible. Then they have to investigate how the fire dragon flew into the city, they have to write a lot of reports. Again, it is the Department of International Magical Cooperation. They are to inform the world of this catastrophic magic leak. And when necessary, they will ask for help from the International Federation of Wizards, because once they see that there are too many Muggles in the fire dragon, the amnestics of the British country will definitely be overwhelmed, which requires the support of other countries. If the request for help is answered, then the Department of Magical Transport will also have to get busy, because so many foreign wizards come to Ying, and they will definitely not come by plane. At this time, the traffic department needs to set up a large number of international FLU network dedicated lines, and it is best to set up a large number of FLU network lines near the incident site, which is enough for the traffic department to be busy. Finally, there is the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. They must arrest the wizard who caused this catastrophic accident as soon as possible. This is also an explanation to the International Federation of Wizards and the domestic people. Once such a thing happens, it is estimated that only the Department of Mysteries and the Department of Sports in the Ministry of Magic will be able to relax. Wizards forbid private keeping of dragons because there were disastrous accidents where fire dragons attacked Muggles and nearly exposed the wizarding world. So, once Hagrid is proven to be illegally raising dragons, he's done. Even if there were no serious consequences, he would be in Azkaban for several years, and he would also have to pay a huge fine. Draco was so excited that he was about to jump up. Solemn dared to say that if Draco released the Patronus at this time, he would definitely succeed. Unlike Draco's excitement, Hermione was terrified. She was not the ignorant Potter and Weasley, she clearly knew the seriousness of this matter. If Draco really reported on Hagrid, Hermione couldn't even imagine what would happen to him. That Scarhead and the scum of the Weasley family will definitely be fired this time. Draco grinned, almost crazy with joy. Oh, are you sure? Solim's voice was very calm. Do you think the two of them are capable of getting a dragon egg? And they also know how to hatch a baby dragon. Whose dragon egg belongs to, then whoever is the main culprit. Because no matter what kind of dragon eggs are first-class contraband, private individuals cannot hold them. Private possession of dragon eggs is illegal for any reason. Draco slowly calmed down after hearing Solim's words. He had just been overwhelmed with excitement along the way, and now listening to Solim's words, Draco had to admit that even if Potter and Weasley were found to be accessories in the end, the Ministry of Magic would not do anything to them. What's more, Draco also knew that Dumbledore would definitely not ignore this matter. After all, their headmaster is the head wizard of the Wizengamot. Who is the chief wizard of the Wizengamot? In layman's terms, that is the Justice. With Dumbledore's connections and prestige, if Hagrid and the two Hogwarts students were really going to be put on trial, it would definitely be a matter of trivialization in the end. Hermione struggled on the side for a long time. Although she didn't like Weasley very much, and she and Potter were just ordinary classmates, she didn't want the two of them to get into such a big trouble. Solemn, and Draco. Hermione put her hands on her knees and clenched her fists tightly. I know you two don't like Harry and Ronald, but, can you let them go? They've caused enough trouble. Yo, Granger, why do you like to meddle so much? Draco was annoyed, finally got a chance to fix the two people he hated the most, but Granger wanted to stop his fun. Hermione didn't speak to Draco, but turned to look at Solemn aside. She knew that if Solemn spoke, Draco would listen to him. Looking at Draco and Hermione who were staring at him, Solemn scratched his chin, thought for a while, and said, why don't you see if it works? Hermione, you can help those two troublemakers, how can you help them? It's your business to get out of this trouble. Then he looked at Draco. Draco, you can do whatever you want. If you can get them fired, I'll count on you. Solemn means that the two will not help each other. Hermione, if you want to help, just help. Draco did whatever he wanted to do. And me, watching a play. From Solemn's point of view, even if Hagrid was indeed arrested by the Ministry, it would not be too much trouble for Dumbledore. Because when the time comes, he only needs to throw out the matter of the Philosopher's Stone and tell the Ministry of Magic. This is part of the plan to protect the Philosopher's Stone, in order to find out the Dark Wizard lurking in Hogwarts. Then the Ministry of Magic has nothing to say, who said that the Ministry of Magic is a subordinate unit of the Presbyterian Church. Malfoy excitedly went out to trouble those two people. And Hermione is more uncomfortable, she still remembers what Weasley said last time, Solemn is right, let the two of them beg themselves, but when those two dull guys find out that something is wrong, they may have already late. Hermione struggled again and again, and decided to go to Harry and Ronald first, and settle the matter first. Here, Harry and Ronald are in the infirmary. Ronald's hand was so swollen that the two had nothing to do but come to Madame Pomfrey. When the two returned to the Gryffindor common room, Hermione was sitting on the sofa waiting for them. You two. Hermione stopped them and dragged them to a secluded corner. Do you know that the two of you are in big trouble? Harry and Ronald looked at Hermione. Malfoy already knew that Hagrid was raising dragons, Hermione said hastily. He followed you, so he saw the dragon. So what? Ronald said impatiently. He just had the medicine on his hands and felt very uncomfortable. Are you an idiot? Do you think Malfoy will pass up this opportunity? Hermione growled. You'll bring Hagrid down. We got him involved. If it wasn't for his dragon, my hand wouldn't be like this. Ronald said disgustedly. Madame Pomfrey just said that if my hand was removed a few days later, possibly an amputation. Harry on the side saw the two people start arguing again, so he quickly said, Hermione, how did you know about this? I was there when Malfoy went to Solemn. Hermione said blankly, and Malfoy said he was going to report you. Private dragon breeding is a serious offense, and Hagrid will be tried and convicted by the Ministry of Magic. Quote. Those nasty poisonous snakes. Ronald cursed viciously. I knew Slytherins were not good things. Hermione gave Ronald an annoyed look. She was looking less and less at Weasley now. Obviously, you didn't pay attention and were followed by others, which led to the current situation, and you still have the face to criticize others. Hagrid's hut is on the edge of the Forbidden Forest. To get to Hagrid's hut, you have to walk through a large open lawn. If someone was following them, they only needed to look back for a moment to find out. It can be seen that the two people did not care about the nature of Hagrid's raising the dragon at all. If Malfoy is really going to denounce us, then we have to figure something out quickly, Harry said. What else can I do? Tell Hagrid to get that dragon away. Hermione said irritably. As long as the dragon is gone, there will be no evidence, and without evidence, there will be no conviction. But Hagrid seems to like that dragon very much. He even gave it a name. I don't think Hagrid will let it go easily. Harry was a little hesitant, and he was not blind. Bo Dialong has very deep feelings. Harry wasn't sure if Hagrid would be willing to let the dragon go. Then wait for the Ministry of Magic to come and take the three of you away. Hagrid is the main criminal, and you two are the accessories. Hermione was going crazy. Why couldn't this man figure it out? It's all critical. How could we be accomplices? We didn't do anything. That dragon is not ours, nor was it hatched by us, and we don't know how to raise it. That dragon has nothing to do with us. Ronald retorted. You were aware of its existence, but you didn't report it to the Ministry of Magic. It's cover-up. Hermione shook her head. Forget it, anyway, I told you that Malfoy is going to report on you, and you can do whatever you want to it. With that, Hermione left. From Hermione's point of view, the two of them were so stupid. What time was it? If they didn't hurry up to find a solution, they still had time to quarrel with themselves. Harry and Ronald looked at each other. They seemed to finally realize the seriousness of this matter. Ronald, let's go find Hagrid, Harry said. We have to persuade him to let the dragon go, or he'll be in big trouble. No, we're all in big trouble, Ronald added. By the time Harry and Ronald were rushing to Hagrid's cottage, Draco had already posted the letter. The letter was sent to his father. Lucius had a strong relationship in the Ministry of Magic, and had a good relationship with the current Minister of Magic, Cornelius Fudge. I believe that if his father went to the Minister of Magic, he would definitely get Dumbledore into big trouble. Just when Draco was complacent and imagining the future, Harry and Ronald finally spoke to Hagrid. Listen to me, Hagrid. Harry's anxious heart directly reflected the speed of his speech. Malfoy already knows that you are raising dragons, and he will report you to the Ministry of Magic. You must release the dragon immediately. Right now. No, Noble is too young for me to do this, he will die in the wild. Hagrid said while patting his still smoking beard. But if you don't let it go, we're all going to be in big trouble. Harry raised his voice. Harry's right, Hagrid, Ronald chimed in. You'll have to let him go, or the Ministry of Magic will arrest you, and I think I can help with that. Seeing Harry and Hagrid looking at himself, Ronald said again, Hagrid, have you forgotten Charlie? He works in a Romanian dragon farm, we can contact him. During this Christmas holiday, Ronald's parents went to Romania visiting his second brother reminded Ronald that he also has a brother who raises dragons. Yeah, how did I forget about Charlie? Hagrid suddenly realized. In this way, I can go and see it when I have free time in the future. Then we'll write to him when we get back. Then Ronald turned his head to look at Harry. Can you use your Hedwig later, Harry? I don't think it's good to use the school owl for this matter. No problem. Even if this matter is settled. On the way back to the castle, Harry and Ronald's mood began to improve. After all, there was a solution to the matter, and the next thing was to wait for Charlie's reply. But their happy mood just turned a corner and disappeared. Hey, it looks like you are very happy. What? Are you excited knowing that you are going to Azkaban to accompany the Dementors? A figure slowly walked out of the shadows, followed by two big armed attendants. Harry and Ronald were very familiar with the three people opposite. What are you doing here? You bloody snake. Ronald felt like he couldn't take it anymore. But he also knew that he and Harry alone probably couldn't beat the three opponents. Me. Draco sneered, of course I came to see you. Then he turned to Goyle and Crabbe behind him and said, you should also take a good look and remember their appearance. Because I doubt, we will not see them soon. After speaking, he laughed. Of course Draco had reason to be happy. He thought that even if Harry and Ronald were not fired, this incident would be enough for them to drink a pot. There is nothing more satisfying than seeing one's enemy suffer. It's not because of you. You stalker. Ronald yelled. I don't think so, Weasley. Draco said arrogantly, that's against the law. Every wizard who sees it is obliged to report to the Ministry of Magic. I'm not a scum like you. Then he looked up and down Ronald and Harry pretendingly. Look at you, one was raised by muggles, and the other. Tisk tisk, Weasley, doesn't your scumbag father like muggles very much? From this point of view, you and Potter really are the same kind of people. Then turning his head to the two followers behind him, he said, maybe you don't know, Weasley's father. Draco turned his head to talk to the two valets, not even seeing that Ronald had pounced on him, but his two valets did. When Draco saw the look on Goyle's and Crabbe's faces, he turned his head hastily and got a solid punch from Weasley. The punch was right on the nose, blood gushed out, and the nose was on one side, but Goyle and Crabbe were still of use, and they held Draco and kept him from falling. What are you still doing? Draco covered his nose with one hand, and supported Weasley's body with the other, preventing him from approaching him any further. Then there's nothing to say. Even if Draco doesn't do anything, Harry and Ronald are no match for Goyle and Crabbe. They are tall and strong, and the thin Harry is pushed aside by them casually. Goyle and Crabbe punched and kicked Weasley, who was lying on the ground. After a while, Weasley's face looked like a dying workshop. Blue and purple. Although Draco got a solid punch and suffered a bit, but when Draco saw that Weasley was beaten so badly, it seemed that his nose didn't hurt much. The fly in the ointment is that Draco's location is not good enough. This happens to be the exit of a secret passage. When Ronald's two older brothers, George and Fred, went out of the secret passage with a lot of things in their hands, what they saw was that their younger brother was being rubbed against the ground. Although the two elder brothers often bullied their younger brothers, it was just a joke between brothers, a bit too much at best. Without saying a word, the two dropped their things and took out their wands to separate them. It was said to be separated, but it actually knocked Gore and Crabbe into the air. Just when these two people were about to take care of these brats who dared to hit their younger brother, a cat meow interrupted their actions. The meow was so familiar to Fred and George that they heard it every night. This is Filch's cat, Mrs. Norris. When you see this cat, you know Filch is not far away. Fred and George quickly picked up the things they dropped on the ground just now, and ran away in a hurry. Harry. Ronald. Hurry up, Filch is coming. After shouting these words, the two disappeared around the corner. Draco, whose nose was still bleeding, Goyle and Crabbe, who were stuck against the wall, Weasley, who was lying on the ground moaning, and Harry, who was unharmed, none of these people ran away, and they were all caught by Filch. Although it is not the time of access control, anyone who is not blind knows what happened here. Student fights, no matter what school they are in, this is a problem that needs to be dealt with seriously. Although it is not popular in the wizarding world to invite parents, confinement and point deductions are popular here. 20 points were deducted from each of the two colleges. Several people will go to the dean's office for the next 2 weeks to be confined. Fortunately, Draco said, Snape wouldn't be too harsh on him. But it was miserable for Harry and Ronald. Professor McGonagall scolded them half to death. The point is that after Malfoy's interruption, they didn't write a letter at all. That night, both Malfoy and Weasley were admitted to the school hospital with injuries. Originally, Harry and Ronald planned to send the letter that night, but without Ronald, Harry didn't know how to contact Charlie. Draco was discharged from the hospital the next morning, and he told Solemn about last night's events over breakfast. You did it on purpose, didn't you? Solemn glanced at Draco. That's it, Draco said with smug eyes. I know they're going to send the dragons away, or they'll have to wait for the Ministry of Magic to catch them. Whatever they want to do, I'll delay them gone. Speaking of which, Draco glanced provocatively at the Gryffindor long table, where Weasley was looking at it with red eyes. I thought about it, isn't there someone from the Weasley family who works in a dragon farm in Romania? I guess Scarhead can only ask him for help. Speaking of this, Draco smirked. I just need to put the owl shed, just keep an eye on it, I can be sure that they haven't contacted there yet. As long as the Ministry of Magic comes first and finds Hagrid, finds the dragon, it will be over. Draco had sent the letter first, and Weasley and the others hadn't written it yet. And the Ministry of Magic officials can come over as long as they apparate, but Charlie can only ride a broom when they come to get the dragon, because the dragon can't use the flow network. Then I wish you luck. Solemn wiped his mouth as he finished. After thinking for a while, Solemn added, but don't get your hopes up too much. I guess our headmaster Dumbledore already knows about this matter. With his contacts and abilities, it is absolutely no problem to hold the Ministry of Magic for a while. Draco looked at Solemn. I can see that you don't like Potter and Weasley either, we can actually give them some color together. After listening to Draco's words, Solemn looked at his nose that had just been repaired by Madame Pomfrey, and said amusedly, then how did I hear that? Then he pointed to Draco's nose. You were repaired by Madame Pomfrey last night. The one that was repaired. Hearing Solemn's words, Draco blushed and retorted, that's when I was off guard. When I was talking back to Goyle and the others, that fool Weasley sneaked up on me. Solemn put away his smiling face. Then you should really thank the fool who sneaked up on you, because you're lucky, the one who sneaked up on you was just a crappy little wizard, and he didn't use a wand yet. Think about it yourself, think what would happen to you if the one who sneaked up on you was someone with a wand. Draco opened his mouth at Solemn's words, but nothing came out. Before your enemy is down, never give up your vigilance. Even if you knock the enemy down, don't talk nonsense with him, and make up the knife quickly. Solemn said, he has seen and heard a lot of villains' nonsense. Generally speaking, when the villain knocks down the protagonist, he will start to shudder and chatter endlessly, and then he will be killed by others after he recovers his strength. There are countless examples of this. What Solemn believes in is to knock down the enemy as quickly as possible, and then immediately make up the knife. If he can, he doesn't even want to give the enemy a chance to leave a last word. Looks like you've been a little drifting these days, Draco. What's wrong with me? Do you think that once you learn the silent casting of the disarming curse, you can start to get flustered? Weasley didn't use a wand, but used his fists to clean you up. If you didn't bring your 2 servants with you last night, guess what? Guess what they will do to you? Solemn asked jokingly. If Goyle and Crabbe hadn't been there last night, Draco would have been beaten like a dog. Weasley and Potter certainly didn't have as good a command of charms as Draco, that's for sure. But the gap is not too big. For ordinary little wizards of this age, if they are asked to duel, fists must be better than magic. You don't like the 2 of them, and you want to deal with them, that's fine, but you have to pay attention to the method. Solemn drew a circle on the table with his fingers. You don't have to do it yourself at all, you call your 2 followers to take care of them. They blocked it and gave it a good beating, but you still wanted to go out and mock him, and Weasley took the opportunity to punch you. What do you think in your head? Harry and Ronald finally sent the letter. This made the 2 of them relax a lot from their recent tension, and then they just need to wait for Charlie to come to Solitaire. It's just that when they got Charlie's reply, Weasley made a stupid mistake. He put Charlie's reply in a book, and that book was later taken by Draco. Naturally, Draco knew when they were going to send the dragon away. And Draco knew, which meant that Solemn knew, although Solemn already knew, and Hermione and Neville, who were there at the time, also knew. When Hermione and Neville returned to the Gryffindor common room that night, they told Harry and Ronald about it. So these 2 people also knew that Malfoy knew. Although it was a bit confusing, people on both sides knew what the other was going to do. A few people found an empty classroom, and Hermione scolded Weasley. Also, compared to godlike enemies, pig-like teammates are hated more. Originally, they thought that even if Malfoy knew they were going to get the dragon away, he wouldn't be able to catch them if he didn't know the time. But now, because of Ronald's negligence, Malfoy now knows. Even if you want to change the time now, it's too late. Charlie and the people he brought should be on their way. Solemn is right. You 2 are mindless trolls. Hermione looked disgusted. Ronald didn't say anything this time, and he knew that because of his own mistakes, things became more troublesome. Hermione, it's too late for us to change our plans. We don't have time to send another owl to Charlie, and this is probably our only chance of getting rid of Norbert. We'll have to take a risk, Harry said aside, and I have an invisibility cloak, it can cover us, Malfoy can't find us. Hermione heard Harry's words, turned to look at him, and asked an irrelevant question. Do you know what Solemn said about you after hearing Malfoy finish your plan? Why should we care what the Slytherin snakes say? Ronald said disapprovingly. Stupid, arrogant, brainless. That's how he judged you. Hermione glanced at Ronald. You and Ronald's 2nd brother agreed to meet at the top of the astronomy tower, right? You are going to send the dragon away there, yeah. Harry and Ronald exchanged glances, and then Harry said, yes, that's our plan. Hermione, I know you're worried about Malfoy, but I have an invisibility cloak, which Malfoy doesn't know about. Before Harry could finish his sentence, he was roughly interrupted by Hermione. Idiot. Why do you have to bring the dragon into the castle? Fortunately, this is not the Gryffindor lounge, this is just an abandoned classroom, otherwise the whole school will know tomorrow that there is a dragon in the school. Seeing that the 2 hadn't figured out the situation, Hermione sighed, shook her head helplessly and said, why don't you tell Charlie to go directly to Hagrid and take the dragon away? Tell Charlie and the others to go directly to Hagrid to take the dragon away, without having to lift the box containing the dragon to the top of the astronomy tower. You also don't have to worry about running into the professor or Filch while walking around the castle. Such a safe and simple method. I don't know if these 2 people really didn't expect it, or they like the thrill of avoiding the professor and Filch in the castle at night. Maybe you guys just like to be involved. Or are you really out of your mind? Hermione grew annoyed. Have you ever wondered what would happen if you were caught in the castle with a dragon on Saturday night? Hermione felt a little dizzy right now. Two little wizards stayed up all night, wandering around the castle, and brought a dragon with them. It's also fortunate that the current principal is Dumbledore, otherwise a probation would not be able to escape. If the headmaster were more ruthless, he might even notify the Ministry of Magic to arrest him. As for the deduction of points, there are not enough deductions. Hagrid's hut is on the edge of the Forbidden Forest, which is quite a distance from Hogwarts Castle. And there's only Hagrid around the Forbidden Forest, no Professor, no Filch. Don't choose such a good transfer location, but choose a castle with professors and Filch patrolling it. And you have to be careful not to make any noise, and you have to avoid the night-chasing professor, and then you have to struggle to move the dragon box to the top of the tall astronomy tower, and sneak back after the handover is completed. Are you tired? Just tell Charlie to go to Hagrid's instead. This saves time and effort, and you can get things resolved without having to venture out at night. But we have already agreed with Charlie that we will bring the dragon belt to the astronomy tower at that time. It is too late to change the plan now. Harry said helplessly. The method is actually very simple, but he and Ronald made it complicated. He knew that he was acting like a fool now, so his voice became smaller and smaller. Hermione closed her eyes helplessly after hearing Harry's words, and sighed. Don't be convinced if you say you have no brains. Why don't you tell Hagrid first that Charlie will go to him to take the dragon? Even if it's too late to notify Charlie to change the plan, so why not notify him in person? After meeting Charlie at the astronomy tower, tell him to go directly to Hagrid, isn't it all right? I've said everything I need to say, you can figure it out. After speaking, he turned and prepared to leave. Hermione was very tired right now. Harry and Ronald's approach is a typical Gryffindor way of doing things. What they have to do must be done by themselves. They pursue adventure and excitement, and never consider the consequences. What they really pursue is the process of taking risks, not the results of taking risks. The adrenaline rush, the heart rate, that's what they're after. But Slytherin is different. It can be said that Slytherin and Gryffindor are two extremes. Slytherins pay more attention to the result. As long as they can achieve the result they want, the Slytherins don't care about the process. In the contact with Slytherin, Hermione actually agrees with Slytherin's rationality and objective view of things from the bottom of her heart. And Gryffindor people are too emotional, they often like to rely on subjective judgments to decide their views on things. Just like the matter of the Sorcerer's Stone this time, anyone who has heard Solim's analysis should be able to understand that Snape is unlikely to steal the Sorcerer's Stone, but Harry and Ronald firmly believe that it was Snape who wanted to steal the Sorcerer's Stone. Unless they see the truth of the matter with their own eyes, they will not change their views. Unlike Slytherin who sees the wind, Hufflepuff who does not seek trouble, and Ravenclaw who has nothing to do with them, Gryffindors are mostly stubborn, and they will stick to their ideas to the end. It is a good quality to stick to the end. If you are heading in the right direction, sticking to the end can certainly bring you gratifying success. But what if the direction is wrong? Sticking to the end will lead you headlong into the abyss, and you will go further and further down the wrong path. Although Harry and Ronald were scolded by Hermione, they also knew how to deal with dragon matters more safely. At this moment, Harry was thinking, if Hermione had been involved in these things from the beginning, wouldn't she be so embarrassed now? He admitted that Hermione was much better than himself and Ronald when it came to using his brain. If Hermione can help these things, it should be much easier to solve. But why wasn't Hermione involved in these things? Harry turned to look at Ronald. I think you should apologize to Hermione. Harry whispered to Ronald. About last time. Hermione intentionally keeps a distance from herself and Ronald now, because what Ronald said last time was too hurtful. Hermione helped a lot, and they didn't thank her. Ronald also sneered at Hermione last time, which made the relationship between them as very tense. Me. Apologize. Ronald thought for a while, okay, just apologize. The two caught up to Hermione at the door as she was about to leave. So, you guys are apologizing to me. Hermione looked at the two of them, although he couldn't feel much sincerity from Ronald's apology, he was more like apologizing out of necessity. But Hermione didn't want to make the relationship with the two of them too rigid. After thinking about it, Hermione still accepted the apology from the two of them. Here Gryffindor is back as a trio. And Draco is still alone there. Goyle and Crabbe, you can let them beat people, you can't count on them for such a thing. Solemn has made it clear that he is not interested in this matter. Draco can only do this work by himself, but he is very interested. People are like this, and they will devote 100% of their energy to things that interest them. At this point, Draco was clearly not a qualified Slytherin. He put a lot of energy into something that was not destined to succeed, and he rolled up his sleeves himself. This is obviously not as good as his old and treacherous father. It is often said that Malfoy can never be found at a crime scene, although the crime wand may be covered with their fingerprints. At this point, Draco was clearly at odds with Malfoy's way of doing things. He walked to the front of the stage above board, charging like a Gryffindor. But it's clearly not for him. So of course he failed. On Saturday night, after closed hours, Draco, who had no invisibility cloak and no disillusionment charms, was caught red-handed by Professor McGonagall, who was on the night watch, on his way to the astronomy tower. Just when Professor McGonagall was pulling Draco by the ear and was about to send him to Professor Snape, this scene was seen by Harry and Ronald, who were hiding around the corner. Just as the two men were laughing and taunting Malfoy, Filch appeared. The two who left the invisibility cloak on the top of the tower were also caught without any suspense. This time, though, Neville and Hermione had nothing to do with it. The invisibility cloak can barely cover 3 people, but the 3 people hiding in the invisibility cloak can only remain motionless, and if they want to move, they can only hide 2 people. And Neville is an insider this time, so he will not come to inform the 2 of them about Malfoy. When it came out the next day that Gryffindor had been deducted 100 points, Hermione was in a daze. Fortunately, today was Sunday, so Hermione had plenty of time to figure out what happened. After learning what happened last night from Harry, Hermione didn't know how to scold these 2 people anymore. The only thing she was lucky about now was that they didn't bring the dragon into the castle, otherwise Hermione couldn't even imagine how bad things would be. After Hermione finished listening, she didn't say anything to Harry and Ronald. Now that the dragon had been sent away, Hagrid would be fine, and Hermione didn't care what the punishment for the 2 giant humanoids would be. In her opinion, this is what the 2 deserve, and it would be good to improve their memory. By noon, the whole Gryffindor knew the 2 little wizards were caught in the night tour last night, and Gryffindor was deducted 100 points. Now Harry and Ronald had a hard time. The seniors and seniors of Gryffindor saw them either sneering or staring at them with a cold face. It was almost the end of the semester, and the competition for the Quidditch Cup and the Academy Cup had already begun, and at this time, Gryffindor was deducted 100 points, which meant that Gryffindor would be at the bottom this year, all because of these 2 a reckless new student. Compared to the 2 hapless ghosts of Gryffindor, Draco of Slytherin was much better. While some people were upset with Draco because Slytherin had been deducted 50 points, they wouldn't show it. A large part of the reason is that Gryffindor was deducted 100 points, which made the Slytherin seniors who have been at odds with Gryffindor very gloating. Malfoy can be said to be an iconic family in Slytherin, and next semester Malfoy will give Slytherin the Quidditch team in the United States-sponsored 7 Nimbus, which allowed Draco to escape any criticism at all. Over breakfast, Draco told Solemn about his going to detention that night. And showed Solemn the note that Professor McGonagall had given him. "What do you want me to do with Filch in the foyer at night?" Draco asked Solemn. "Shouldn't it be in Professor Snape's office? Your detention begins tonight at 11 o'clock. Find Filch in the foyer, Professor McGonagall." Solemn read it and returned the note to Draco. Solemn knew that they would go to the Forbidden Forest at night, and he knew what they would encounter. Although it looked dangerous, it was actually not dangerous. "Obviously the school has other plans for you." Solemn replied absent-mindedly. He wasn't interested in Voldemort and Quirrell in the Forbidden Forest, but he was interested in a dead unicorn. Solemn has never seen a unicorn with his own eyes, and Solemn is very curious about this kind of creature. More importantly, the unicorn is full of money, especially the horn of the unicorn, which is used in high-end magic wands, potions and alchemy. The asking price of an adult unicorn horn in the black market is 200 to 300 galleons. As for why it is a black market. Because unicorn horns are Class 1 contraband, only special authorization from the Ministry of Magic is required to store and use such items. While Solemn is interested in unicorn objects, he does need to fill his pockets. But he wouldn't think of a unicorn at this time, because he didn't have the relevant tools and plans at all. And he doesn't think it's a good choice to add extra branches in this kind of place. Don't worry about it tonight, be honest. Solemn thought it would be better to warn Draco first, otherwise something would happen with his temperament. Although Solemn knows the state of Mr. Fu now, but he has never seen it with his own eyes, he must be curious, but Solemn is not going to meet him now. Besides, what can he say when he sees him? Hello, Mr. Riddle, I'm just curious to see how miserable you are. You see, it's no wonder Quirrell didn't give you an Avada. If you really see Mr. Fu, he is in such a miserable situation now, only Quirrell can command him, and he is not very obedient. What if you were made to serve him? Reject. Anyway, now people are barefoot and not afraid of wearing shoes, so you have no reason to kill you. Agree. Then how long do you think you can live after being possessed by Mr. Fu, who doesn't even have a body? Quirrell is a lesson from the past. So Solemn had no intention of meeting Voldemort at all. Be obedient tonight, don't cause trouble, I warned you. Glancing at Draco, Solemn was about to leave. Draco hurriedly stood up and followed. Do you know something? Draco asked. I know you always know something I don't. Solemn couldn't tell Draco. I'm going to meet your idol tonight, so you can ask him for an autograph. It's not appropriate, is it? So Solemn simply doesn't speak. Let Draco guess. Anyway, the young master will come to him in a hurry to find out the situation tomorrow morning. Solemn thought it would be better for Draco to recognize Voldemort. Voldemort is not a high-quality idol, not to mention his bad image, and he often spreads negative energy, which will have a negative impact on the growth and development of young wizards. For such artists. No, for such wizards, we should resolutely crack down on them. Teenagers in the wizarding world establish correct three views. Besides, it was true that Lucius was a Death Eater, but was he really willing to be Voldemort's dog? Not to protect the family. It's just that the wizards who interacted with Lucius were indeed not decent wizards, and it was understandable that Draco had a feeling of admiration for Voldemort under his influence. Just like Dumbledore judged, Draco is not a murderer, his soul has not fallen yet. He's just a kid from a good family and somewhat cocky. Solemn had gotten closer to Draco in Slytherin, and knew him somewhat. Solemn thinks Draco has a bright future if he doesn't waste his talent. Given Neville's changes now, Solemn felt that Draco needed a little change now too. In Charms class on Monday morning, seeing Draco's pale face, Solemn knew that he hadn't recovered from the shock he had received last night. After class, Draco took Solemn to the back of the crowd, and their next class was herbal medicine. Draco felt like he wouldn't be able to sleep tonight if he didn't figure out what that shadow was. After Solemn's warning, Draco was mentally prepared for the confinement. But he still didn't expect that the school would make such an arrangement. At 11 o'clock in the evening, freshmen like them were required to enter the Forbidden Forest to search for an injured unicorn. Draco wasn't Harry and Ronald. He knew how powerful a creature or wizard could be to maim or even kill a unicorn. He even protested violently like Hagrid, using his father's name, but ultimately failed to prevent them from entering the Forbidden Forest. The Forbidden Forest is dark enough during the day, let alone at night. If it weren't for the occasional faint moonlight, if it weren't for the dim light in your hand, you wouldn't even be able to see anything here. Draco couldn't remember how many times he'd knocked against a tree in the Forbidden Forest, how many times his robe had been cut by branches and undergrowth. The Forbidden Forest is not flat land. The terrain here is high and low. It is easy to sprain your feet when you can't see the road clearly. Draco had been paired with Harry and Fang by Hagrid, and Hagrid had been paired with Ronald, and the two of them and a dog scoured the trails in the Forbidden Forest. When it comes to searching, they stumble along the road. Most of the time they stare at the road under their feet, and they have no time to look around. But even if they walked so cautiously, trouble still found them. They found a dead unicorn in a clearing in the Forbidden Forest. The unicorn's unique silver-white blood was all over the place. Just when he and Harry were about to shoot green sparks with their wands, a black shadow came from it, got out of the bushes, stuck to the ground and covered the unicorn's body, and then began to drink its blood. Draco, who had never seen such a horrible scene, immediately ran away screaming, leaving Harry alone. Although several people reunited intact afterwards and the confinement was over, that terrifying shadow has always been lingering in Draco's mind. Solemn, what the hell is that black shadow? I've never heard of such a thing. Draco raised his doubts to Solemn after telling what happened last night. You saw that dark figure drinking unicorn blood, right? Solemn asked. And do you know what happens if you take untreated unicorn blood directly? You mean, that black figure I saw was a wizard? Obviously, only wizards would drink unicorn blood. Any magical creature, they might kill a unicorn, but they would never use a unicorn for food. Only wizards can use the blood of unicorns, and as long as you know this, you can figure out that the shadow is definitely a wizard. But, wouldn't it be possible to take the blood of a unicorn directly? Draco was a little hesitant. Would there really be such a wizard? Draco is clear about the consequences of taking unicorn blood directly. After all, this is common sense in the wizarding world. Would anyone really rather be cursed like that than drink unicorn blood? That's right, a short extension of life, but in the end you will die in cruel torture. Solemn added Draco's unfinished words, only those wizards who have nothing and nothing to lose will use this method. Extreme ways to prolong your own life. But why in the Forbidden Forest? Draco asked a good question. Unicorns are not magical creatures unique to the Forbidden Forest. If you really want to get unicorn blood, there are also some on the black market, as long as you pay the starting price. Even if you choose to hunt unicorns yourself just to be on the safe side, there is absolutely no need to come to the Forbidden Forest of Hogwarts. Although there are not many unicorn habitats in the UK, it is better than Hogwarts. Much safer on Dumbledore's grounds. Why? Of course because the unicorn here is the closest to the wizard. Solemn replied. After thinking about it carefully, Draco's face changed. You mean, that wizard is near Hogwarts? Even in the school? It's not too stupid, isn't this an obvious thing? Voldemort's current situation must be very bad, so bad that he would risk his life by hunting unicorns in the Forbidden Forest. Voldemort possesses Quirrell and can control his body to a certain extent, which means that Voldemort and Quirrell's souls are somehow connected, and the vitality provided by the unicorn blood will replenish Voldemort's soul through Quirrell's body, but cursing Voldemort certainly wasn't going to be at all. What a poor man. Solemn sighed. What? Draco didn't understand what Solemn was saying. Remember the end of semester event I told you a few days ago? It will open your eyes then. Solemn was going to call Neville and Draco to watch the scene, and by the way, Evan's calling, this is also one of his jobs. If Draco was frightened, Harry felt fear. Firenze, the unusual centaur, told some facts that made Harry's scalp tingle. Voldemort, the murderer of Harry's parents, is still alive and ready to make a comeback, and the Philosopher's Stone is the key item that can bring him back. Harry no longer had time to think about final exams, school rules, Quidditch, house cups and other trivial matters. The only thing he had to do now was to prevent Snape from stealing the Philosopher's Stone, otherwise once Voldemort was resurrected. Harry didn't dare to think about the horrible consequences. He didn't study anymore now, and spent all his spare time every day monitoring Snape's whereabouts. He told Ronald and Hermione of his plan. Once Professor Dumbledore left Hogwarts, it was probably the time for Snape to do something, so they had to keep an eye on Snape, otherwise once he stole the Philosopher's Stone, everything would be over. Although Ronald was not a little, he should be very scared. But he still promised his good buddy at the first time that he would do everything possible to help Harry. Hermione hesitated for a moment. For Hermione, the exam was about to come, and it was really difficult for her to give up her review time to follow Snape's stalking. But Hermione also knew that if what Harry said was true, then the exams really didn't matter anymore. If Voldemort really came back to life, then the wizarding world would definitely be full of blood and blood. The last time Voldemort and his men wreaked havoc on the wizarding world, Hermione had already learned a lot from the books. What's more, she was a Muggle-born wizard herself, which was within Voldemort's strike range. So no matter for her own sake or the sense of justice in her heart, Hermione would not allow Hermione to refuse. Hermione decided to help Harry protect the Philosopher's Stone, but the method was debatable. After all, judging from the past deeds of Harry and Ronald, they have a high probability of messing things up. The protection of the Philosopher's Stone is absolutely unacceptable, otherwise the consequences will be extremely serious. And even if Snape was really going to steal the Philosopher's Stone, Hermione didn't think that the three little wizards alone would be able to stop him. In the conversation with Solemn, Hermione had heard Solim's praise of Snape more than once. The three of them had almost no chance of success against an ordinary adult wizard, let alone an elite wizard like Snape who could be a professor at Hogwarts. Hermione had seen Snape's transfiguration firsthand in the small classroom they frequented, and she couldn't figure out how to resist that magic. So Hermione thinks they need to ask for some help. When Hermione brought the thoughtful Harry and the reluctant Ronald to the small classroom, what she saw were Malfoy and Neville lying on the ground. Hermione was not surprised by this, she knew they were practicing a spell. But it was the first time Harry and Ronald had seen the two of them like this, and they finally knew what Hermione called practicing a spell was like. Seeing a few people coming in, Solemn waved his wand and lifted the petrifying spell on Neville and the binding spell on Draco. I guess it's time for you to come too. Solemn had expected Hermione to come to him. Harry will definitely tell Ronald and Hermione what happened in the Forbidden Forest after he returns, and with Hermione's temperament, he will definitely come to ask himself. Once through the door, Hermione walked straight towards Solemn. Solemn, Draco should have told you what happened in the Forbidden Forest last night, right? That's right. With a wave of the wand, the chairs that had been cleaned up flew over and landed beside them. Sit down, tell me, why you came to see me this time. Solemn beckoned them to sit down. We need your help, Hermione said first. Harry thought that Shadow last night was Voldemort. The effect of this statement was immediate. Neville slid off the stool in fright, and Draco blushed angrily. Among the wizards who worship Voldemort, they think it is a great disrespect to call the Dark Lord by his first name. Draco obviously worships him now. One of the Dark Lord's crowd. As for Ronald, he just trembled a little bit. You know, Harry had whispered Voldemort in his ear many times, and he was now resistant. Before I say this, Hermione, I have a piece of advice for you. Then Solemn turned his gaze to Harry, especially you, Harry. Everyone knows the name of the Dark Lord, but do you think how many wizards call him by his name? The name, Voldemort, is not something that you can say casually. Neville, you sit still. Seeing that Neville was about to fall off the chair again, Solemn quickly shouted at Neville. But Dumbledore just called him by his first name. Harry retorted. Ah, Dumbledore, yes, many powerful wizards don't shy away from calling him by his name, but do you guys deserve the word, powerful? Solemn knew very well that when a great wizard casts a spell on a name he agrees with, what kind of effect will there be after the curse. He decided to explain this clearly to these little wizards. People don't say his name, not because of the name, but because of the consequences of saying it. Solemn looked at Harry and Hermione. In this small classroom, Ronald was a born and bred little wizard, and he would not call Voldemort by his name directly, and Neville was the same. And now Draco is Voldemort's little fanboy, so naturally he won't call his idol by his name directly. The only ones who would call out Voldemort's name directly were Harry, who knew almost nothing about the wizarding world, and Hermione, who knew little about it. Voldemort, it's just a name, a title. Talking about it is really no big deal, you can talk about it all day long if you want. The premise is that the name is not tied to his own soul by a great wizard. When a powerful wizard casts a spell on his name, as long as the magical creature speaks the name and utters the complete syllables of the name, the owner of the name can feel it. If you want to say Voldemort's name, but don't want him to find out, you are either a powerful wizard who can temporarily block this magic, or you become a muggle, a creature without magic. Even if you say Voldemort, his name will not be felt by him. When the evil forces headed by Voldemort were raging in Ying, the wizards didn't dare to say his name. If they had to say it, they would just use, mysterious man, or, that person, instead of his name. Because no one wanted to be approached by his Death Eaters. Many iron-headed children have verified this with their own lives and the lives of their families. As long as you say Voldemort's name within the range of Ying, then when you go home at night, you will find the dark mark floating above your house, provided you have not been killed by Death Eaters. Although the current old man Fu is already in the waning days, he has only one horse boy who can be commanded, and this horse boy is not very obedient. But no one knew if he could still feel his name being spoken. 10 years have passed since Voldemort disappeared, and the wizarding community in the UK still hasn't been freed from the horror he brought, and no one will say his name openly. The most elite group under Voldemort was the Death Eaters. Most of these Death Eaters were of pure blood origin. They were marked with his dark mark by Voldemort. This mark could reflect the status of the owner of the mark to a certain extent. Although the marks on the arms of the Death Eaters have hardly moved in the past 10 years, these Death Eaters who have been branded with the dark mark know that their master is in a bad state. Yes, it is bad, but still not dead. These Death Eaters know it all. On the night of Voldemort's crash, the Death Eaters were also divided. A group of people headed by the Lestrange couple thought that they should immediately find their master and help him make a comeback. Another group of people believed that the original boss was finished. In order to prevent the magic world from settling accounts with them, they must immediately draw a line with the gangsters, even if they are tainted witnesses. The reason why there are differences among the Death Eaters is because their purpose of joining the Death Eaters was different from the beginning. There is a natural boundary between diehards like the Lestranges and those like Malfoy who have to become Death Eaters just to protect their families. This is like a club. A group of people are loyal to the boss, and they want to go out and kill people every day, while the other group is just dawdling, and they don't work hard when they go out to kill people, just pass by. In the wizarding world of the UK, it's not big, it's not small. There are not many people who are connected with these pure blood families. Naturally, these people also know that the original Black Boss is not dead, and is preparing to make a comeback. In fact, every wizard is thinking in his heart, if he really didn't die, if he said that name, would he be punished by Choho? After saying that name, there were too many tragedies in the past where the whole family was wiped out. You must know that there are always some people in this world who do not believe in evil. These iron-headed children have used their lives and their families to tell the entire wizarding world, don't say that person's name. The power of habit is formidable. Once you get used to saying Voldemort's name when he comes back from the resurrection, and you don't change that habit in time, the consequences are predictable. In Hogwarts, you can say his name as much as you want, but outside of school, it's best not to do it. Unless you want to bring death to you and your family. I warned you. Solemn added at last. Don't think you can deceive us by saying these words. Then Ronald pointed at Draco. His father is a Death Eater. And now that person is waiting outside the school to be resurrected with the Philosopher's Stone. How do we know? You are not in the same group. Harry was about to speak, but fell silent again when he heard Ronald's words behind him. The Malfoys are Death Eaters, and they were able to get away with it because they claimed they were under the Imperious Curse, and they stuffed a lot of galleons into the Ministry of Magic. In this way, Harry heard in Gryffindor not a lot. Weasley. Do you want to duel me? Draco stood up abruptly, drawing his wand. Okay, sit down first. Solemn comforted the angry Draco, then looked at Harry and Ronald expressionlessly. I didn't ask you to trust me. You came here because you want to the one who asked for my help, right? Hermione. With the last words Solemn looked at Hermione. Before Hermione could speak, Solemn went on to say, also, I don't think you Weasley are qualified to make irresponsible remarks to Malfoy. You know, your family didn't starve to death, and it's all up to you to have a place to live. Family portrait. When you say that, don't you feel a little ignorant? The Ministry of Magic, which governs the wizarding world, is a relatively independent institution. If an organization wants to operate normally, it must have a source of funds, either directly allocated funds from the superior, or it has its own profitable industry. But the Ministry of Magic has none of that. The Ministry of Magic said it was a subsidiary organization of the Council of Elders, but the Ministry of Magic could not get a single copper canute from the Council of Elders, and the Ministry of Magic had no industry. Almost all the industries in the wizarding world were in the hands of pure blood families. But so many people in the Ministry of Magic eat horse chews, where does the money come from? It is mainly provided by the pure blood families. They donate a large amount of galleons to the Ministry of Magic every year to maintain the daily expenses of the Ministry of Magic. In return, seats in the Wizengamot and managers of various departments will be given to these pure blood wizards. Reserved, as long as someone from a certain pure blood family wants to find a position in the Ministry of Magic, It is extremely simple. As long as a notification is made, the entry procedures will be completed in the afternoon. In addition to the funds provided by the pure blood families, the Ministry of Magic has a few other sources of funds. Like the sale of land in Diagon Alley, building houses in non-wizard settlements, and fines for wizards who break the law, but compared with the funds provided by pure blood wizards, these incomes are mosquito legs. The wages of all the employees of the Ministry of Magic can be said to be provided by these pure blood families. In addition, the wages of wizards who work in farms and plantations controlled by pure blood forces are also paid by pure blood wizards. It can be said that the entire wizarding world is actually working for pure blood wizards. There are 3 members of the Weasley family who work: Arthur, Bill, and Charlie. In their place of work, one of the behind-the-scenes bosses is Malfoy. It can be said that the Weasley family is working for Malfoy. I told you last time that the Weasley family can survive until now because of the mercy of pure blood families like Malfoy. Solemn looked at Ronald, who said nothing. You better control this mouth, Weasley, or you won't have time to cry when you get yourself and your family into big trouble. But Malfoy is a Death Eater, Harry said suddenly from the side. Yes, that's right, Lucius Malfoy is a Death Eater, no one will deny that. Solemn gave Draco a wink, but I can say that if the Malfoys really loyal to Voldemort, will they do nothing for 10 years? Perhaps you only found out that Voldemort was not dead yesterday, but I can tell you now, as early as 11 years ago, on the night when he failed, on that night when ordinary wizards celebrated the end of the Dark Age, quite a few people know he's not dead. Every Death Eater knows their master's not dead. Listen, every Death Eater. Even if I don't tell you, you should know how a wizard like Voldemort would treat a traitor. Solemn changed his sitting position to make himself more comfortable. Pass him. Solemn glanced at Neville at this point, and the kid's face was a little pale. There were also some Death Eaters who were in a hurry to distance themselves from him. Any idea why? Solemn asked. What else could be the reason? Isn't it because they are afraid of being judged by the Ministry of Magic and thrown into Azkaban? Ronald said disdainfully. Glancing at Ronald and Draco, who was about to explode, Solemn shook his head. It's not just that, they want to get rid of Voldemort, this opportunity is hard won for them. Then Solemn turned to Harry. Harry, let's make a hypothetical. Your parents weren't killed 11 years ago, and Voldemort didn't fail. You lived with your parents, you went to Hogwarts, you even graduated. Until one day, the Death Eaters and even Voldemort himself came to ask you to be loyal to him. If you don't obey, they will kill your parents. Tell me, Harry, how would you choose? Harry had a long mouth, and he didn't know how to answer the question. If my parents are still alive, I should be very happy, right? Not sleeping in a cubicle under the stairs, not eating leftovers, not being bullied, not being called a wild child by kids my age. If my parents really lived to the present, how could I not cherish that kind of life? But for such a life, can he really become a Death Eater? Seeing that Harry didn't speak, Solemn didn't take it seriously, and continued, judging from your parents' behavior, they love you very much, and they even gave up their own lives for you. What about you? It's to save the lives of your own family members. Choose to be a villain, or to be a good person and risk the lives of my whole family. You all can think about what you would do if you were in this situation. Solemn said to the people around him. No matter what, I'm not going to be a Death Eater. Ronald looked disgusted. Oh, really? Even if the consequences of refusing are the lives of your whole family? You can be so determined? Solemn questioned. Then pretend to agree, and wait for the opportunity to hide with the family. Hermione said on the side. Then you will die a miserable death. Maybe you don't know very well, Voldemort is a master of legilimency. If you want to lie in front of him and you can't see through it, then your level of occlumency must be extremely high, so that you can't let him see it. Solemn denied Hermione's words. Legilimency is really not an unpopular magic. The reason why many wizards think it is unpopular is because they don't have enough contact with it. In the circle of high-end wizards, there are some magic that must be known. The pair of legilimency and occlumency can be regarded as the inner spear and shield of the wizard. Legilimency is the spear to spy on others, and occlumency is the shield to protect oneself. As long as they are high-level wizards, they will learn these two magics. Whether they are proficient or not is another matter. So you see, if Voldemort really comes looking for you, and you want to protect your family, you can only agree to him. Then Solemn added, of course there will be some people who have a strong sense of justice and would rather die than surrender. Wizards, such as Burns of Hufflepuff, the Burns family has no males now. Once Susan Burns gets married, this family will disappear into history like so many pure blood families in the past. Quote. Harry and the others looked at each other. Susan Burns and the others knew that Hufflepuff was a bit shy. They didn't expect her family to have such an experience. Either choose to join him in order to protect your own family, or be exterminated. It's very simple, choose one of the two. Spreading his hands, Solemn continued, unless your family is a contract family of the Presbyterian Church, or there is a family in your family great wizard, make Voldemort unwilling to take risks, or your family is completely useless. Speaking of this, Solemn glanced at Ronald, only if you have one of these, Voldemort or the Death Eaters will not bother you. Glancing at Draco at the side, Solemn continued, Lucius Malfoy just chose to protect his family. From this point of view, there is no way to criticize him. Even if you say that, he is still a Death Eater. Even if it was to protect his family, how many innocent people he killed, how many tragedies of extermination were done by these Death Eaters. There are 2 families in Godric Valley who were killed by them killed, my dad talked about it. Ronald didn't seem to agree with Solemn. Weasley, you hate the Malfoys, don't you? Solemn's next words pierced Ronald's heart like a sharp knife. If Voldemort finds you and asks you to kill the Malfoys, it will save your family, would you do it? One side is your own family, and the other side is someone you hate so much. Are you sacrificing your family in order to stick to your principles, or kill a person you hate for your family? If it is true happened, how would you choose? The principle of being a human being can also be said to be the bottom line, which is the last persistence in a person's heart. Once this persistence is broken, people's hearts will change accordingly. The original bottom line is destroyed, and people will instinctively establish another bottom line with a lower level, and then one day it will be broken again. Slowly, yes, it will become more and more bottomless. A completely depraved person, a depraved wizard is born. Manipulating people's hearts, Voldemort could be called a master here. On the one hand is the life of myself and my family, and on the other hand is the bottom line of my own life. The desire for life is the instinct of every life, but the principle and bottom line are also a person's inner persistence. When the cruel reality comes, struggling with the choice between the bottom line and life, no matter what decision is finally made under the conflict of human nature and instinct, Voldemort at the side will feel the emotion of the person involved through his superb legitimacy, conflict and pain, and that's what Voldemort's fun is about. He didn't really care if these wizards came to kiss his robes, he just wanted to torture the hearts of others and see their pain. Is your bottom line more important, or your family is more important? This question made several people confused, and this heavy question made these young wizards torture their hearts time and time again. Except for Harry, he had no family anymore, and he didn't have as much love as others. Think about it. We didn't come to you to hear that. Harry felt that the subject had gone a little too far. Raising his eyebrows, Solemn looked at Harry and said, well, you guys want to protect the Sorcerer's Stone. Although I told you last time, Dumbledore is safe in the Sorcerer's Stone, and no one can steal it from his place. But you Gryffindor don't seem to trust our headmaster very much. We didn't mistrust him, we just. Harry was at a loss for words for a moment. You just think it's safe to do it yourself, don't you? Staring at Harry's face, Solemn asked, are you wondering how to steal the Philosopher's Stone first and then give it to Dumbledore? The 3 of Harry looked at each other. They obviously didn't tell Solemn their plan, but how did he know? Although Hermione knew, but Hermione had no chance to say it just now. Legiliancy. You can still do this magic. Hermione cried out in surprise from the side. Solemn had just said something about legilimency, which reminded Hermione. Solemn had been staring at Harry just now, and Hermione guessed that Solemn had used legilimency on Harry. Hearing Hermione's words, Solemn was taken aback for a moment, then smiled and shook his head. To tell you something you don't like to hear, how can you use legilimency to deal with you? That's how Gryffindor behaves. It's very easy to guess what you're going to do next. I will do anything. But I have to say one thing, I don't know legilimency. Solemn wasn't lying, he really didn't know legilimency. This magic is not simple, it requires a strong mental strength. Usually one will not start practicing this magic until they are adults. Leaving aside the topic of legilimency, Hermione began to explain their plans to Solemn. So, as I thought, you are going to steal the Philosopher's Stone first, so that Professor Snape can't steal it. After listening to Hermione's words, Solemn said with a smile, and you came to me just to lure me into the gang. Let me help you crack the traps set up by the professors along the way. And help you fight against Professor Snape. The conscience of heaven and earth. Solemn had planned to pull Neville and Draco as spectators from the beginning, he even had popcorn ready. Who knew that he was going to become an actor right now, and how many people were there? Will the next 5 have to bring a substitute? Besides, these people were going to drag themselves against Snape. Leaving aside whether Snape would steal the Philosopher's Stone or not, there was no way Solemn could beat Snape, not even pin him down. These few people don't seem to be very clear about the power gap between adult wizards and minor wizards. There is a world of difference between underage wizards and adult wizards in every way. No matter how talented a little wizard you are, it is impossible to fight against an adult wizard. Of course, the adult wizard mentioned here is an adult wizard who has received a formal education, not those rats hiding in the corner of Nocturne Alley. Perhaps the little wizard can take advantage of his unpreparedness and cause a little trouble to the adult wizard, but it is impossible to defeat an adult wizard. Let's use an analogy, an 11-year-old child and a healthy adult, even if the child has hit the adult's weakness, such as the lower body or something. That would only make him temporarily incapacitated, and even make the adult explode in anger instantly, and directly use a big move. But as long as this child is contacted by an adult, it goes without saying what will happen to him. Strength, stamina, and ability to resist blows are not at the same level at all. Think about how the Hulk beat Loki. Those spells of little wizards can't even break the protection spells of adult wizards, let alone defend against attacks from adult wizards. Despite the fact that Solemn had once killed a grown troll with fiendfire, he was sure that Fierceflash posed little threat to Snape. Snape is no ordinary wizard, he is proficient in charms, transfiguration and defense, although another area he is proficient in, potions, is of little help in the battle, but it is enough to take out a few of them little wizard. He only needs to wave his magic wand, and they will basically be controlled. Solemn couldn't see the odds against Snape at all. I'm not interested in the Philosopher's Stone, and I don't think the Philosopher's Stone will be stolen. But you obviously don't think so. Since you are going to protect it yourself, I can help you. Solemn said that he would not be with them nonsense, but could offer some help. Solemn knows which institutions the professors have set up and how these institutions should be passed. As long as they provide some things they can use on the road, they can speed up their progress in clearing the Hogwarts Sorcerer's Stone 5 books. Solemn would not download such a low-level dungeon by himself, and the pay and reward are not directly proportional. The Philosopher's Stone is a quest item, even if you get it, can you hack it? In the end it wasn't necessary to turn in the quest to Dumbledore. The final result was that Harry, Ronald and Hermione made a bet, and Solemn helped them prepare the potion and eat and drink. Then Solemn will bring Draco and Neville to the edge of the Obe, and by the way, he will also ask Evans to be their bodyguard. Although Solemn has not talked to Evans about this matter, he will not refuse, after all, this is his main task. After dismissing a few people, Solemn turned his head and opened his own box, and began to rummage through it. Last time Gilvez sent a lot of things, including not only the 5 bottles of precious potions, but also various materials and alchemy items. Solemn remembered that there were a few items for self-defense inside, and he was going to take them out and lend them to Harry for the time being. Draco and Neville returned to the next door to continue practicing their spells, while Solemn went out to talk to Evans. After his identity was discovered, Evans felt refreshed and stopped being his toad. He found a hidden classroom in Hogwarts and lived in it. He usually used Phantom to move around the castle. Cursed to hide his whereabouts. But it must have been Dumbledore's acquiescence. A grown wizard who wasn't a member of the Hogwarts staff was not allowed to stay in the castle for an extended period of time. The place Evans chose for himself was on the 4th floor, a room very close to Lu Wei. After all, his main task this year is to guard the Philosopher's Stone. Although Evans also believes that it is impossible to steal the Philosopher's Stone under Dumbledore's nose, it is necessary to put on a show. It was also the first time for Solemn to come here, and the room Evans chose was really nice. The room was divided into upper and lower floors, and there was a staircase on the left and right leading to the second floor. A glance below reveals where Evans used to work. Here are piles of parchment. It must have been where he rested. Solemn saw Evans as soon as he entered the door, but his current image. You really regard Hogwarts as your own home. Solemn couldn't help saying something when he saw Evans' appearance. Evans was wearing a shirt on top, and his arms were open, revealing palm-wide hair. Underneath was a pair of blue and white striped shorts. I just woke up. I was busy until this morning. Evans complained. I thought it would be quite comfortable to come to Hogwarts. There are too many things to record, and. Speaking of this, Vince was no longer confused, staring at Solemn and said, the little guys in Gryffindor are really tossing. I followed them around in the Forbidden Forest, and then came back to stare at the door. I'm sleeping, it's a serious deficiency. Can't they just stop? Evans said he followed Harry into the Forbidden Forest, so he must have seen something. Thinking of this, Solemn is not ambiguous. Since you mentioned this, I just have something to discuss with you. Solemn told Evans that the Gryffindor trio was going to make a copy. After listening, Evans slapped his chubby face with a slap. Isn't this nonsense? Can't they lighten my burden a little? Evans felt that his head was a little big when he thought of writing a lot of reports. Harry's mind was on the Philosopher's Stone and Snape during this time. Especially when he overheard what Quirrell said in his office, which made Harry think that Snape was threatening Professor Quirrell, and now Harry was even more convinced that Snape was going to steal the Philosopher's Stone. The exam was about to come, and under Hermione's strong request, Harry still used his spare time to review his homework more or less in the last few days. Although he himself thinks it's useless. Today is Thursday, the last day of the exam. After finishing the last History of Magic exam, Harry and the others hurriedly stopped Solemn in the Great Hall, because they had just learned that Dumbledore had left Hogwarts. Now the protection of the Sorcerer's Stone is at its weakest. Harry and Ronald thought there was a good chance that Snape would do it tonight. I've figured it all out. Solemn, do you remember Hagrid's dragon? It must have been done on purpose by Snape in order to trick Hagrid on how to get through Fluffy, and I've seen Snape threaten and force Professor Quirrell. He probably already knows how to pass the checkpoints set by the professors, and now that Professor Dumbledore is not at school, Snape will definitely do it tonight, and we have to act as soon as possible. Harry took the initiative to find Solemn this time, and said something as soon as he came up. It's a long sentence, and I didn't even have time to change my breath. You can imagine how anxious Harry is now. So Solemn didn't say something to tease them, but simply took out a few things. Take these things, they are useful to you, but you have to return them to me afterwards. If they are damaged, you will be compensated according to the price. Solemn took out a few items from his robe and handed them to the three of them. What was given to Harry was a ring with a single polymorph applied to it, only to be transformed into a knife. The one given to Ronald is a leaf-shaped brooch. When the wizard wearing it is in danger, he can actively release the iron armor curse once, and it can only be used once in a short period of time. It was a coin for Hermione. Okay, you guys can do whatever you want, then said to Hermione, you've used this coin before, so you should know how to use it, good luck. After speaking, the three of them were left behind, and they left. On the way Solemn met Filch and greeted him. Speaking of Filch, Dumbledore really took this responsibility, deducted a part of the funds provided by the school board for Filch to buy potion materials, and then these materials will be handed over to Professor Snape. When I am free, I will help Filch configure potions. Filch was very grateful to Solemn for this, and if he saw Solemn in the castle during gate hours, Filch would pretend he didn't see him, and would tell him if Professor McGonagall was on patrol tonight. For Solemn, wandering around the castle at night is fine as long as he doesn't bump into Professor McGonagall. In the evening, Solemn took Draco to the pre-arranged location, where he met Neville and Evans. Come here quickly, this little fat man said. They have already set off. Evans took out his wand and cast a spell on several people one by one. Is this the ignore charm? Solemn felt it, and asked Evans. That's right, as long as you don't make obvious noises stupidly, And don't run directly in front of them, those little guys won't find you. Evans replied. The place where the four agreed to meet was in the corridor outside Evans' room, and they only needed to turn a corner to see the door of Guan Luwei. When several people were standing by the trapdoor, Luwei was taking a nap on his stomach. It looks like Hermione has re-enchanted the harp, which is much more effective than Harry playing the flute himself, and saved them a lot of trouble. Now none of the people in Solemn looked at the open trapdoor, they were all staring at Luwei. Three-headed dog. Many people have never even seen its activity photos, let alone a living three-headed dog. Solemn woke up first, took out the bottle and walked towards Luwei. Solemn. You're crazy, what do you want? Draco saw Solemn walking towards Neville, and hurriedly lowered his voice and shouted at Solemn. This is a living three-headed dog. His saliva, blood, nails and hair are all very valuable materials. Solemn held his breath, the smell in Luwei's mouth was really not very pleasant. Solemn collected 3 vials of saliva and some hair before he suffocated. Okay, they shouldn't be below now, we can go down. After Evans finished speaking, he jumped into the trapdoor first. What's this? Solemn was the last to go down, and while he was still falling, he heard Draco making noise. Something is haunting me. In an instant, a flame filled the entire dark room, and these photophobic demon nets quickly shrank and hid in a relatively dark corner. This is the Devil's Net. Didn't Professor Sprout hand it over to you during the class? And the written part of the herbal medicine exam has Devil's Net. Didn't you do it? Solemn asked dissatisfied while holding his butt Draco. Before he fell into the Devil's Net, Evans summoned the flames. If Solemn hadn't moved quickly and grabbed a shrinking vine, he would have fallen to the ground firmly. Compared to Draco, who was frightened, Neville on one side was much calmer. When he realized that it was the Devil's Net and was about to relax himself, Evans made the first move. Compared to Draco, Neville knew what it was and how to solve it, so naturally he would not be frightened like Draco. Neville may be a little slow to react, not suitable for fighting. But he is willing to work, and he is willing to focus on the field he is good at. Neville was the Gryffindor student who scored the most points at the hands of Professor Sprout, who taught herbalism, more than Hermione. It was too dark just now, how did I know it would be the Devil's Net? If I knew it was the Devil's Net, I would still. Draco suddenly paused, and then looked at the hiding place of the Devil's Net in disbelief. Looking at Solemn, how could it be a Devil's Net? They use the Devil's Net to protect the Philosopher's Stone. Draco is not stupid, on the contrary, he is very smart, but sometimes the smart is useless. He found it incredible. What is the Philosopher's Stone? What is the Devil's Net? These two things are not at the same level at all. Using the Devil's Net to protect the Philosopher's Stone is different from using goblins to guard Gringotts. If Gringotts dared to use goblins to defend their vaults today, Gringotts could be evacuated tomorrow. As long as he is a wizard, as long as he has a wand in his hand, the Devil's Net is not a threat, let alone a threat, and trouble is not a problem. This is still for ordinary wizards. Will a wizard who dares to steal the Sorcerer's Stone be an ordinary wizard? Can the Devil's Net stop this kind of wizard's footsteps? Even Draco felt something was wrong, let alone Evans. When he just fell down, he realized that the Devil's Net was under his buttocks. At that time, he was stupid, thinking that he felt wrong. How could Hogwarts use the Devil's Net to protect the Philosopher's Stone? When he really confirmed that it was the Devil's Net, his mood was like seeing a ghost. If the Philosopher's Stone had been stolen, the first, good person responsible would have been Dumbledore, who hadn't escaped. But can Evans get rid of the relationship by himself? His main task this year is to watch over the Philosopher's Stone so that it cannot leave the range of Hogwarts. This year is my first year at Hogwarts. It hasn't been a year yet, and I was fired because of a major work mistake. You can't laugh people to death if you say it. Then what will I do in the future? Wherever I go, people will point to him and say, "Look, that is the idiot who lost the Philosopher's Stone at Hogwarts, so such a moth can be made in an idle job." In the future we the unit absolutely cannot have such employees who don't care about work. Evans is sad about his future, and he still believes that Dumbledore can protect the Philosopher's Stone. But he didn't expect that just after he came down to inspect the work, the cruel reality gave him a blow in the head. As long as these crap things you made can protect the Philosopher's Stone, then hell. Solemn looked at Draco with disbelief and Evans with grief and anger, and then took out 4 buckets of popcorn out of nowhere and said, "Come on, don't worry, don't get angry, let's watch while eating." Quote. Evans turned his grief and indignation into appetite, stuffed delicious popcorn into his mouth, and said, "What is this? It tastes good." Evans is a typical wizard, he has little contact with muggle things, and it is the first time he eats popcorn. Also for the first time were Neville and Draco. "Okay, let's eat while walking." Solemn greeted, and a group of people walked forward bluffing. Lu Wei came down to the devil's net, and then the key that Professor Flitwick had cast a spell on. Seeing this, Evans began to feel something was wrong. "I said, are you professors a little bit big-hearted, and you use such a simple thing to protect the Sorcerer's Stone? Or is the Sorcerer's Stone not here at all, and it's just a smoke bomb released by the professors to confuse the enemy?" Looking down at the door that had been counter-cursed, Evans rolled his eyes, held the popcorn in one hand, took out his wand and pointed at the keyhole with the other, and with a click, the door was opened by him. In Evans' eyes, neither the Devil's Net nor this door can be regarded as pediatrics. For little wizards, the unlocking spell will not work on a door that has been counter-cursed. But for a qualified adult wizard, it is not a problem whether it is to break the anti-curse or use the blasting spell to forcibly destroy this kind of wooden door. But this is the question that is bothering Evans now. What are these professors doing? Thinking of this, Evans glanced at 067 who was still eating popcorn heartlessly. "Hey, do you know something about the Philosopher's Stone?" Evans was a little embarrassed every time he saw Solemn, but he concealed it well so that no one would see it. His animagus was seen through by the 11-year-old little wizard in front of him, which made Evans want to give everyone in the know a note of, "Forget it all," every time he thinks about it. Solemn squinted at Evans while eating popcorn. "You'll know what's going on right away. Don't talk nonsense, I'll have to rely on your magic later." The three of Harry had already passed Professor McGonagall's chessboard, and for this reason, the room was quite chaotic, with large and small broken stones everywhere. Ronald wasn't hurt, though, thanks to what Solemn gave him. Instead, he walked forward with Harry and Hermione. "My God, what happened here?" Draco looked at the broken chess pieces on the ground. "Did an explosion happen here?" "This is Professor McGonagall's transfiguration." Solemn was explaining to the bewildered Draco and Neville. Many young wizards don't pay much attention to transfiguration. In their view, transfiguration is just changing one thing into another, just like what Professor McGonagall did in the first class, turning a table into a head pig. It's like tricks, similar to herbal medicine classes, as long as you don't engage in related work after graduation, it won't have much impact on the wizard's future life and work. Little wizards pay more attention to spells, potions and defenses. But this view is extremely wrong, as long as some wizards with some vision know that transfiguration is an indispensable skill for wizards. Almost all powerful wizards have a fairly good transfiguration technique. Dumbledore did it, Voldemort did it, Evans did it, Snape did it. Transfiguration can be said to be the essence of European magic. It integrates attack, defense, and control. As long as the transformation technique is mastered, wizards can play a lot of tricks in battle. But transfiguration is easy to learn and difficult to master. Transfiguration is a subject that requires a solid theoretical foundation, and requires continuous learning and exploration, and transfiguration is more important than magic spells. It is a kind of magic category that needs to be developed step by step. Transfiguration is not a magic spell. As long as there is enough magic power and enough control, it is the kind of magic that can be released by knowing the spell. It is an extremely delicate and complex type of magic, and there are not many wizards who are capable of learning it well. Evans stood on the riddled chessboard with a strange expression on his face. When he first came in, he saw the mess all over the place, and he thought that the jokes in front were to make the intruders relax their vigilance, and this place was a trap carefully arranged by the professors. But Evans took a closer look and almost lost his mind. It is true that these chess pieces have been cast with a transformation spell, but this is too careless. After being broken, it will not recover, and there is no temporary contract on this chessboard at all. This chessboard doesn't require you to win it. As long as you don't walk past these chess pieces stupidly, they won't make any moves at all. You can walk on the chessboard and slip past, these chess pieces can't do anything to you. Is this loophole too big? Evans couldn't bear it anymore, and quickly walked up to Solemn and asked, quickly, what's the idea of the Hogwarts professor? These mechanisms don't seem to be designed to protect the Philosopher's Stone at all. You, CFBB, quickly tell me what Dumbledore is thinking. Lips curled, Solemn didn't expect a wizard who could be sent to Hogwarts to be so impatient. But seeing that we are almost at the end, it doesn't matter whether we talk about it or not. You should have noticed. Solemn and Evans walked forward while talking, except for the three-headed dog at the beginning, the other organs along the way, let alone adult wizards, are Hogwarts. It is not difficult for senior students to pass these. However, these mechanisms are simple, which does not mean that the intruding wizard has the ability to remove the Philosopher's Stone. There is absolutely no need to set up so many mechanisms to protect the Philosopher's Stone. In fact, only the most unexpected mechanism is needed. The most important function of these previous organs is to delay time and test Harry and others. Otherwise, Dumbledore really wants to protect the Sorcerer's Stone seriously. Even if he finds it troublesome to carry it with him, he can leave it in the principal's office. The two statues guarding the principal's office are not vegetarians, and no one can enter without giving the password. After listening to Solemn's words, Evans looked awkward. Her lips trembled, and she said stammeringly, that is to say, this is actually an amusement park for that savior. Almost. Obviously, our headmaster didn't pay attention to the wizard who sneaked into Hogwarts from the very beginning. In his eyes, training Harry and seeing his character clearly are more important than protecting the Philosopher's Stone. After Solemn finished speaking, he put away his popcorn, turned to several people and said, don't eat it, you won't have an appetite in the next room. Sure enough, when several people came to the next room, Draco almost threw up. This is what? Draco retched a few times. Neville pinched his nose too. This time, Solemn put the head bubbling curse on himself first, and only after Draco and Neville had smelled the troll's unforgettable smell, did he put the head bubbling curse on them. After having the bubble curse, Draco and Neville's complexions obviously looked a lot better. You should have given us this earlier. Draco complained dissatisfied. Solemn didn't think so, the two boys had never faced a giant monster before, and it was a good experience to experience it up close this time. Evans on the other side didn't use the bubble head charm at all, in fact, he didn't use anything. As far as he is concerned, the smell of the troll does not bother him in any way. He had seen things far more terrifying than trolls. A few people didn't speak, and passed here quickly. Although there was a bubble head spell, no one wanted to stay in a place full of stench. And they are about to reach the bottom boss, so take advantage of this time to adjust your mentality. Evans, please put a silencing charm on both of them, so they won't be exposed later, Solemn said. He is now going to the front to confirm whether the three of Hermione have passed Snape's checkpoint. The coin he gave Hermione was just an ordinary coin, without any magic on it, but with potions. That coin soaked in fire retardant, if thrown into the fire. The flame will be suppressed or even extinguished. Solemn didn't believe that the wall of fire in Snape's level could be fiendfire. As long as it is an ordinary magic fire, the fireproof potion will work. When he arrived in a room where no one was there, Solly turned around and said seriously to several people, then it will be real. With the illusion charm, you can hide your figure, and with the silencing charm, you can cover up your voice. Solemn and the others slipped into the last room leaning against a corner. Solemn had already agreed in advance, just watch and ignore everything else. Even with Solemn's words, Evans kept his wand in hand just in case. The three of Harry had been subdued, and they were tied with the rope that Quirrell conjured up. Quirrell is standing in front of the mirror of Arised, helpless. I thought it was Snape. Harry struggled, trying to figure out what was going on. He had long believed in his heart that Snape was going to steal the Philosopher's Stone, and Quirrell was protecting the Philosopher's Stone, and he had heard Snape threaten Quirrell more than once. Oh, yeah. Quirrell heard Harry's words, turned around, and said triumphantly, yeah, Snape doesn't really look like a nice guy, does he? He flies around like a giant bat, it's very helpful to us. With him there, who would doubt? But, poor, stutter, where's the Quirrell professor? Quirrell laughed. This laughter is not his usual shrill trill, but a chilling sneer. But Snape was trying to kill me on the pitch. Harry couldn't believe this everything. No, no, it's not like that. At this point, Quirrell looked a little gloomy. I was the one who wanted to kill you, and I cast the curse on you. Snape has been chanting counter curses to interfere with me. If it weren't for you, the little girl next to me knocked me down and ruined my gaze on you. You should have fallen off the broom long ago. Speaking of this, Quirrell's tone has become vicious. As expected, Hermione lay on the ground without saying a word. She was thinking of a way to escape, but the magic power of adult wizards was obviously much stronger than those of young wizards. The rope on my body couldn't break free at all. Snape, help me. Snape was saving himself, which was even more unbelievable than Quirrell had just come in. I told you a long time ago, Harry. Solim's analysis is very reasonable, you just can't listen to it. If you had listened to Solim earlier, you wouldn't be like this. Hermione desperately winked at Harry, also emphasizing the name of Solim. Gryffindor's brains turned quite fast in critical situations, which was quite different from their usual. Harry quickly understood what Hermione meant. The situation just now confused Harry's mind. After Hermione's reminder, he remembered that Solim gave him a ring that could be turned into a knife. Seeing Harry's movements, Hermione hastily diverted Quirrell's attention. You put in the Halloween troll too, didn't you? Glancing at Hermione, Quirrell said, of course it is. It's a pity that while the other professors were looking for the troll, Snape, who was already suspicious of me, rushed straight to the 4th floor, which made me fall short. But you fortunately, little girl, if it wasn't for that Selwyn, you should have been beaten to death by the troll. Solim was eating popcorn, looking at the familiar and unfamiliar scene in front of him, feeling a little excited for a while. It's a pity that they can't communicate with each other now, because everyone has a silencing spell on them, and the other party can't hear them. Now, you just lie there obediently. I need to take a good look at this golden mirror. Quirrell turned around, ignoring the 3 little wizards who fell on the ground. It wasn't until this moment that Harry realized that the thing standing behind Quirrell was the Mirror of Erised. He knew he had to do something now, and anything would stop Quirrell from focusing on the Mirror of Erised. I saw you with Snape in the Forbidden Forest. I heard him threatening you. Harry was now trying to distract Quirrell with words. That's right, Quirrell said lazily, turning around to look behind the magic mirror. He had his eye on me then, to see what the hell I was up to. He was suspicious of me. He wanted to scare me. Actually, how can he scare me, with Voldemort as my backer? You're not a Death Eater at all. Hermione said suddenly. Death Eaters don't call him by his first name. Quirrell didn't move. He turned his head slowly and looked at Hermione. You're right, little girl. I'm not a Death Eater. No matter where I go, he's with me. Harry was about to cut the rope, but when he heard Quirrell's words, he asked in surprise, I heard you crying in the classroom a few days ago, and I thought it was Snape. Could it be, at that time? Yes. Glancing at Harry, Quirrell said blankly, yes, like I said, he was with me wherever I went. I met him when I was traveling around the world. I was still a foolish young man with a ridiculous set of ideas about right and wrong. It was Voldemort who pointed out my mistake. There is no such thing as right and wrong in the world, only power, and those incompetent people who cannot gain power. Since then, I have served him faithfully, but I have disappointed him many times. He has always been very strict with me. Quirrell shuddered suddenly. He never forgives my mistakes easily. He was very upset when I failed to steal the Philosopher's Stone from Gringotts. He punished me and decided to monitor me more closely from now on. Quirrell's voice trailed off into inaudible silence. Quirrell shuddered suddenly. Yes, the Philosopher's Stone, I have to get it. Then Quirrell turned around and looked at the Mirror of Erised again, but what should I do? Break it. What function does it have? Help me, Master. In the next second, not only the 3 people lying on the ground, but also the few people hiding to watch the excitement looked at Quirrell in disbelief, except for Solim, who knew what was going on. Use that boy. Stupid. Use him. Came a strangely hoarse and feeble voice from Quirrell. Okay. Come here, Potter. Quirrell clapped his hands together, and the rope that was about to be cut by Harry was suddenly untied. Harry got up. Walked slowly towards Quirrell. He knew that he had to delay the time now, and this was the only way he could think of at the moment. Hurry up. Quirrell urged Harry irritably. No matter how much he procrastinated, Harry finally stood in front of the mirror of her eyes. This was the third time he saw himself in the mirror, but this time there were no parents, no family, only another self. When he saw himself in the mirror, he was pale and frightened at first, but after a while, he smiled. Harry in the mirror reached into his pocket, took out a bright red stone, then blinked, and put the stone back into his pocket. At this moment, Harry felt that something heavy fell into his pocket. It's unbelievable, he actually got the Philosopher's Stone just like that. Evans, who has been paying attention to the development of the situation, clenched the hand holding the wand. He has already realized that there is suddenly an item full of powerful magic in this room. In this case, all Evans can think of is the Philosopher's Stone. But should I go up? My task is to ensure that the Philosopher's Stone is within the range of Hogwarts. Even if someone really gets it, as long as it does not leave the range of Hogwarts, I should not care. But now Evans decided to take another look. How? Quirrell asked impatiently. What did you see? I saw me shaking Dumbledore's hand. Harry began to make up. I won the house cup for Gryffindor. Go away. Quirrell gave Harry a swearing push, and when Harry stepped aside, he felt the Philosopher's Stone against his thigh. Is it time to flee now? But what about Ronald and Hermione who are still bound? Before Harry could think about his next move, the hoarse voice from Quirrell spoke again. He's lying. He's lying. Come back. Potter. Tell me what you just saw. Tell me the truth. Otherwise. Quirrell gestured to Ronald and Hermione who were still lying on the ground with his eyes, which was already a naked threat. Let me come, let me talk to him face to face. But, Master, your physical strength has not recovered yet. There is still some strength. Harry felt himself being entangled in the devil's web again. Quirrell turned, turning his back on Harry, and began to remove the scarf that had been wrapping the back of his head. When Harry saw the back of Quirrell's head, he wanted to scream, but in fact, someone was already a step ahead of him. Ronald and Hermione had already called out. Fortunately, Neville and Draco had the silencing charm on them, otherwise their cries would have filled this small room. Where the back of Quirrell's head should have been, there was a face. Harry had never seen such a hideous and terrifying face. The face was pale, with bright red eyes emitting light, and underneath were two snake-like nostrils. Harry Potter. The face on the back of Quirrell's head said the name with emotion. It was the owner of this name who caused him to become what he is now. A great wizard with a great reputation turned somersault in the hands of a baby. Voldemort couldn't help being filled with emotion. Sometimes he thought, if he didn't go there in person, but asked a helper to go down, the result might be completely different. Harry instinctively wanted to back away. But his legs didn't work. Look at me, see what I have become now. Then, the face looked towards the wall. Mice over there, come out, even if I am now like this, that childish illusion don't even try to escape my eyes. Oh shit, it's over. It seems that people have already discovered it. I just, 893, know that great wizards are not easy-going lamps. Don't look at Voldemort, who is in such a bad state now, he hasn't been discovered yet. Although Solemn ate a lot of popcorn before, but now his mouth is bitter, I want you to join in the fun. Evans was straightforward, and directly lifted the illusion spell of several people. But what happened next was a bit more dramatic. Not to mention that the mood of the three of Harry was like a roller coaster, from despair to full of hope. Voldemort's reaction was a bit interesting. Seeing Evans, Voldemort just wanted to speak, but he saw three other little wizards appearing. What's going on? Although Voldemort's current appearance is very curious, he can still see the expression on his face anyway. Solemn noticed that they seemed to come out a little early. Evans was a little embarrassed. From Voldemort's expression, he found that Evans was true, but he probably didn't find Solemn, Neville and Draco. Just when Evans was thinking about whether to do it directly, Solemn calmed down and spoke. Now that they have all come out, we still have to talk about the scene. It can be seen that you only found him, the Dark Lord, and you probably didn't find the rest of us, he said, pointing to Evans who was on the side, but he cast the disillusionment spell on us. It doesn't make sense for you only found him and not the rest of us. Can you explain the mystery to me, a curious student? It can be seen that Voldemort is in a bad mood right now. He came to steal a Philosopher's Stone, but so many things happened in the middle. Although he has become like this now, he still has eyesight. He knew that Quirrell was probably no match for the dumpy grown wizard, even with his own help. Since it's not a good choice to do it now, then let's intimidate and praise. Anyway, I am very familiar with this method. Ignoring Solim's words, Voldemort said to Evans, "When I am resurrected, I will give you everything you want. Power, money, powerful magic, I will promise you whatever you want. As long as you now give me the Philosopher's Stone on Potter. I'll also keep these little wizards safe, don't you think?" Coercion and lure plus realistic threats. This is Voldemort's old routine, and in his memory, this trick has been tried and tested. But at that time, he was still in his heyday, with a powerful strength beyond the reach of most wizards. But the words he said in such a ghostly manner had no effect at all. Evans is no ordinary wizard. He can be sent to Hogwarts, it shows that he has a few brushes. Solim didn't dare to say anything else. Judging from his short confrontation with Snape that day, he was superior to Snape in Transfiguration. Moreover, Evans works for the Presbyterian Council, and the Presbyterian Council is his backer. Voldemort really killed a wizard with a special mission in the Council of Elders, then you will have a bad life in the future, although the current Voldemort is not too good. And are there any powerful wizards in the Evans family? If you kill him, will the elders of his family come to trouble you? Fu untouched. On one side is a half-dead wizard, and on the other side is the powerful Presbyterian Church. Any fool knows what to do. I don't care if you want to take the Philosopher's Stone, and I don't care what you want to do with it. Evans' words seemed particularly cowardly. Voldemort thought what he just said had worked, but Evans' next sentence it made Voldemort change his face. "But if you want to take the Philosopher's Stone out of Hogwarts, then I have to take care of it." Evans' task was simply to ensure that the Philosopher's Stone did not leave Hogwarts. Whether the Philosopher's Stone was used or destroyed was none of his business. As long as the Philosopher's Stone doesn't leave Hogwarts, love can do whatever it wants. But trying to get the Sorcerer's Stone out of Hogwarts? Nope. Voldemort's back molars were about to crumble, if he had any. Don't bring it out of Hogwarts. Do you want to be resurrected in Hogwarts? Under Dumbledore's eyelids, the compound eyes see that the Sorcerer's Stone is in front of you, and you will be able to have a body right away. How can you fall short here? Aren't you afraid that if we fight, these little masters will die? Voldemort began to threaten Evans with the lives of Harry and others. I'm not a professor at Hogwarts, I'm a Presbyterian. Hearing the Council of Elders, Voldemort fell silent. He knew that he couldn't afford to mess with the Presbyterian Council, let alone his half-dead self now. Even in his heyday, even when his subordinates were the strongest, he couldn't afford to offend the elders. Voldemort knows that he can do whatever he wants in the magic world, as long as he doesn't touch the core interests of the Council of Elders, they won't care about him. After all, Voldemort is also a great wizard. If the Council of Elders decides to eliminate him, they will definitely send out a great wizard, so who will they send? There are too many uncertainties in the battle between the great wizards. Because the magic between each other can easily destroy each other. The battle between great wizards is either ping-pong-pong for a long time, relying on fighting intuition and fighting literacy to seize opportunities to severely injure each other, or, like an egg hitting a stone, quickly resolve the battle. But even so, if it is not arranged in advance, it is no problem for a great wizard to run away. The eyesight of the great wizards is not bad, and they know that they can't beat the opponent at a glance, and they will definitely run away. And even if you could beat Voldemort and kill him, he couldn't die because of the Horcruxes. This is very annoying, so in the opinion of the elders, going to Voldemort is completely a high-risk thing. Various factors resulted in this situation. Voldemort did not provoke anyone or anything related to the Council of Elders, and the Council of Elders treated Voldemort as if he did not exist. Let Dumbledore and Voldemort strangle each other. Anyway, neither of these two belong to the Presbyterian Church, and it doesn't matter who dies to the Presbyterian Church. No one can imagine what Voldemort has experienced in the past 11 years. He has been lingering for 11 years without a human being or a ghost. During the 11 years of darkness, seeing the Philosopher's Stone right in front of his eyes, seeing that he will soon be able to regain possession of the 3.7A body of his own, nothing can stop him. He had to get himself out of this inhumanity. Voldemort had had enough. Regardless of whether the short and fat wizard in front of him would stop him, but as long as he got the Philosopher's Stone, he would be one step closer to his new body, so there was no reason for Voldemort not to give it a try. And enough time has been wasted now. If Dumbledore comes back, then there is really no chance. Potter. Give me the Philosopher's Stone. Or I'll kill them. Voldemort turned to threaten Harry, and Voldemort planned to get the Philosopher's Stone first. At this moment, Harry felt his legs and feet coming back. Hearing what Voldemort said, he instinctively covered his trouser pockets and stepped back. Don't be a fool. Give me the Philosopher's Stone honestly. Then I can save your life. Don't let your mother die for you. Voldemort had no patience. He ordered Quirrell, catch him. Quirrell who was smashed into pieces, Voldemort who fled in black smoke, Harry who was unconscious, Ronald and Hermione who were terrified, and Solemn who watched the whole show. Draco's face was a bit complicated. He already knew that the one who wanted to steal the Philosopher's Stone was the Dark Lord. In his impression, the elders always said that he has boundless magic power and is omnipotent. But what did Draco see? A human face parasitic on the back of someone else's head, a dying Dark Lord. It can be said that Draco grew up listening to the legend of the Dark Lord. The adults said he was invincible, but Draco saw that Harry just touched the Quirrell possessed by him, which made him extremely painful. Quirrell also because of Harry's touch, it turned into pieces all over the place. The wizarding world says that Harry Potter is the savior who defeated the Dark Lord when he was a baby. Draco scoffed at this, thinking it was all nonsense. Until he saw it just now, the Dark Lord was barely able to fight back against Harry, and the Dark Lord was defeated by Harry Potter, again. In the end, the Dark Lord had to turn into a cloud of black smoke, which shook Draco's original reverence for the Dark Lord. The Dark Lord, whom adults say is invincible, fled in front of a little wizard who was only 11 years old. This is simply a joke. A group of people surrounded Harry, only Draco and Solemn did not pass by. Solemn has been paying attention to the expressions of Draco and Neville. Neville was just a little scared, but when Voldemort fled, he was the first to rush to Harry's side. But Draco was different. His face changed from surprise to fear, then to shock and disbelief, and finally turned to disappointment. After appearing, Solemn has been paying attention to Draco, and Solemn has seen all these changes in him. The surprise when they knew that Voldemort was in this room, then the fear after seeing Voldemort's appearance now, then the shock of Voldemort and Quirrell being defeated by Harry, and finally the disappointment after seeing Voldemort's failure to escape. It was not difficult for Solemn to understand how Draco was feeling right now. You know, as a child who grew up in the Malfoy family, the elders he usually comes into contact with are, those people will always tell him how powerful the Dark Lord is, how omnipotent he is, and how powerful he is. In the future, he will lead the pure-blood wizards to create a brilliant future. Children need an object of admiration, and Draco will of course regard Voldemort as an object of faith and admiration in his life under the influence of his ears and eyes. But what he saw today gave Draco a big shock. The all-powerful Dark Lord, defeated by the same little wizard, once again fled. Draco's worship of Voldemort began to collapse. Is such a down-and-out wizard who can't handle even a minor wizard really omnipotent as adults often say? Is it really as powerful as adults say? Can it really lead pure-blood wizards to create a brilliant future? If Draco had asked this question before today, Draco would definitely have answered in the affirmative. But after what happened just now, Draco abandoned all his original admiration and longing for Voldemort. Seeing the tangled expression on Draco's face slowly subside, Solemn said, "How is it? Is this performance still to your liking? You already knew it was black. No, it was Voldemort who wanted to steal the Philosopher's Stone, right?" Draco looked at Solemn. "That's right, I think we can talk about it later when we go back." Solemn signaled Draco to pay attention to the changes in the room. Voldemort was gone, so it was time for Dumbledore to come back. His timing was just right. Not long after Voldemort escaped, he brought Professor McGonagall and Professor Snape to this place. Seeing a large group of people in the room, Professor McGonagall was very surprised. She originally thought there were only 3 people, but who knew there were so many insiders here? Besides Harry and Ronald and Hermione, there were Longbottom, Malfoy and Selwyn, and an adult wizard she had never seen before. Compared to Professor McGonagall's surprise, you will never see surprise on Professor Snape's face. What's more, he has seen everyone here. As long as he had to think about it in his head, he knew that someone who shouldn't be here must have something to do with Solemn. After a long time of contact, Snape knew Solemn very well. Although he was much more mature than his peers and had a much broader vision, he would often do things that seemed meaningless. This time, he must be bringing people to watch the fun again. Snape wasn't surprised by that. Dumbledore first checked Harry's condition, and then asked Professor McGonagall to take a few students to the school infirmary. Minerva, take these children to Bobby first, they need to rest now. Then he lowered his head slightly, and looked at Evans and Solemn firmly through his glasses. I think I have something to say. Need to talk to this gentleman, obviously, now is the right time. Of course, I don't think Mr. Selwyn is hurt, and he will certainly not want to chat with an old man like me. Solemn shrugged, he didn't care. Professor McGonagall and Professor Snape were calling a group of students out, and Evans and Dumbledore were staring at each other. And Solemn stood unsteadily in front of the Mirror of Erised. Seriously, if there is a chance to see the Mirror of Erised, who can resist and not stand in front of the mirror and take a look at himself? In a way, the Mirror of Erised can make a person understand himself better. Inner longing. Because human beings have desires, but there are too many desires, and sometimes people themselves don't know which one is the most urgent and longing for. And this Mirror of Erised allows people to see what they desire most in their hearts. Looking at himself in the mirror, Solemn smirked. He saw his many paper figurine wives and figurines filling a wall. And behind him, standing neither parents, nor grandpa and sister. It was an old thief and a fat man. One of them was smiling at Solemn, and the other was holding a sign that said, -75%, and rubbing his fingers at Solemn. It's really. Solemn didn't know what to say to himself. Is this desire or resentment? This year is 1992, even if I want to send money to that fat man, I still have to wait 10 years. And that old thief, he has to wait 17 years. It seems that I am still a nerd in my heart. It was emotional and funny. Solemn left the Mirror of Erised. Looking back, there were only 3 of them left in the room. Neither Dumbledore nor 700 Evans spoke, they both noticed Solemn's movements. Seeing both of them looking at him, Solemn said to Evans, "Don't you take care of yourself? It's interesting." Before Evans could speak, Dumbledore spoke first. Then Mr. Selwyn, if it's convenient, can you tell me what you saw in the Mirror of Erised? Dumbledore's glasses reflected the firelight on the surrounding walls, making people unable to see his eyes clearly. Hey, I used to call out Solemn one by one in your principal's office, but now I'm Mr. Selwyn. Solemn rolled his eyes mentally. Nothing, something interesting. There was no way Solemn could just tell Dumbledore what he saw. Seeing that Solemn didn't want to talk about it, Dumbledore didn't bother, and he still had a lot of things to deal with now, so he didn't have time to waste time on it. So, is this the first meeting, Mr. Summerby? Hearing Dumbledore's words, Solemn looked at Evans, whose last name he knew for the first time. For Dumbledore to know Evans' surname, Solemn was not at all surprised. If he couldn't even find out this, Dumbledore would have been found out long ago. Solemn. Summerby, Felix Summerby. Solemn thought of a name. When it comes to Somoby, the first thing he thinks of is this name. The owner of this name invented the happiness spell. And the happy charm is a compulsory part of the ordinary wizarding level examination, that is, OWLs. Thanks for watching, please subscribe and support our channel.